George DeCiro City and County Buildings Council Chambers located at 1 DeCombs Drive. Or you can also watch live on Channel 8 and through live streaming on Broomfield's website, broomfield.org/live. The public may also participate in public comments either in person or by calling 855-695-3744 and pressing *3 to be placed in a queue for comments. Screeners will ask callers for their first and last name, neighborhood, and agenda item that the caller would like to comment on. If you'd like to speak on more than one item on tonight's agenda, you need to press *3 each time to be placed back in the queue for comments. Public comment tonight will be limited to 90 minutes total per item. The first 1 through 15 participants in the queue have 3 minutes to speak. The next 16 to 25 participants have 2 minutes to speak. And if any time remains, the next 26 participants in the queue have 1.5 minutes to speak. I'm looking at the audience tonight. I do not believe we're going to have that problem. So for our hearing impaired residents present, we also have wireless headsets available through our AV team in the back of the council chambers. The city council regular meeting is called to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Anderson. Here. Cohen.
Here.
Delgadillo. Here. Hinkle. Here. Jezierski.
Here.
Leslie. Lim. Here. Marsh Holstrom. Schaff.
Here.
Ward.
Here.
And,
Castriata.
and Mayor Castriata is remote tonight.
Okay.
Mayor, can you hear us?
Yes, here.
Okay, a quorum is present. As you heard, Mayor Castriata is joining us remote tonight. Unfortunately, she is unable to be here in person. And Councilmember Leslie should be joining us virtually in a bit as well. Therefore, tonight we will be using a roll call throughout the meeting. Will everyone please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. In an effort to keep order for tonight's meeting, I ask all council members to limit their comments to 5 minutes, as usual. If council members are given an opportunity to speak for a second time on an item, they should limit their comments or communications to 2 minutes. And we will plan on a 10-minute break at approximately 8 p.m. We will begin today with council's review and approval of this evening's agenda. Council may add or remove items from the consent agenda, or council may revise the order of business for the meeting. Does any member of council have any comments or questions regarding this evening's agenda? Seeing none, this agenda is approved. Okay, we have I believe a couple items tonight under petitions and communications. I'm going to start with the Metropolitan Football Stadium District funds provided to the city and county of Broomfield as a result of the 2022 sale of the Denver Broncos Football Club. I believe Broomfield staff will provide a presentation this evening. Also, I believe joining us should be some Broomfield youth representatives. Would staff and the Broomfield youth representatives please come to the podium?
Director Casey. We have a whole host, everybody that's sitting over there actually has participated in this. I'm sure that council and the community has read with interest, I'm sure, that the host of communities that have received these funds struggle with how to spend the funds. So rather than putting the cart before the horse, we engaged the population that will be most impacted by these funds. You're about ready to meet all of them. And a whole host of a comprehensive collaborative team from Broomfield in order to ensure that the funds would be spent. Oftentimes we complain that it's too prescriptive and then it's not prescriptive at all. And then we say it's not prescriptive enough. So we're trying to find that sweet sauce. Director Casey, please walk us through this.
Thank you, Manager Hoffman. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, Mayor remotely, and members of council. I'm Dan Casey. I'm the Director of Human Services. And I drew the short straw tonight to be the host, the MC for this particular agenda item. I want to walk through kind of quickly the history and the background, and then I want to turn it over to our youth that actually are going to be most impacted by this generous donation or generous refund, I guess, if you will. So in September of 22, the Metropolitan Football Stadium District notified the city and county of Broomfield that we were going to receive $1.096 million. Not a small amount of money. It's a pretty decent size that we were not anticipating. So we quickly put our noodles together and started talking about how we could spend this money. We were one of many cities and counties. There's actually 40 municipalities and 7 counties that receive some portion of the funds. And the Metropolitan Football Stadium District Board elected to distribute the proceeds proportionately to all of those cities and counties that were involved in the 1/10 of 1% tax from 2001 through 2011. Again, this is from the sale of the Denver Broncos football team. So that stadium, the Invesco Field, was a private, public-owned stadium. And when the Walton Penner Group purchased the Broncos, that sale of the stadium also occurred. And the $40 million was refunded to those 40 cities and 7 counties. The only provision set forth by the district is that it be spent on youth activities. As Manager Hoffman said earlier, sometimes when it's too prescriptive, we kind of scratch our heads and try to figure out how to use it. And sometimes when there's no prescription at all, we scratch our heads and try to figure out how to use it. So that's what we'll be walking through with you tonight. So the other stipulation is that we provide an accounting of how the funds were spent or how they intend to be spent 1 year after we received the check. So we already have that dollar amount in the bank. It was provided in September. So in September of 23, we have to provide to the district kind of an accounting of what we did with the funds. As I said before, a large group of staff kind of quickly came together and put our heads together and started talking about all these cool, crazy ideas that ranged from, if you can think of it, I think we thought of it as well. Lots of different interesting ideas, but we've narrowed it down to kind of 4 categories for you tonight. But we have participation from the city manager's office, economic vitality, our finance team, human resources, obviously human services, library, arts, history and extension, the municipal court, open space and trails, parks, rec and senior services, police department and public health. And I think I hit all of them. I may have missed one. And I'm sorry, you can go to the next slide. There's the lovely list that I was reading there. Next slide, please. So for our proposed activities, they were all developed in part with youth from Broomfield. One other quick highlight I would like to make is the funds are not specific to any population of youth. This is for all youth in Broomfield. Again, the stipulation was youth activities. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Laura Paulson to come to the podium and talk about how the youth were involved.
I don't want to do this now. Good evening to Mayor Pro Tem, Mayor virtually, and council members. I'm Laura Paulson. I'm the Youth Projects Coordinator for Broomfield Public Health. I'd like to summarize how youth input was incorporated into the list of ideas that will be shared with you in this presentation. So as many of you know, Broomfield has a Communities That Care, or CTC, coalition that addresses substance use prevention and mental health promotion among youth. This is a community-based coalition with representatives from a variety of sectors and organizations in Broomfield, including our school districts, mental health centers, nonprofits, library, rec center, and others, including Councilmember Lim, who is our council representative. We also have a youth advisory board, Youth for Youth, or Y for Y, which advises the CTC coalition on their strategies and also has strategies of their own. So here with me tonight are several of our Y for Y advisors, Lydia Seedorf, Saba Cord, and Valerie Kim. I'm going to turn it over to Lydia to discuss a recent Y for Y project, a participatory research activity called Photo Voice that served as inspiration for a lot of the recommendations on this list.
So as Laura said, Photo Voice was one of our recent projects that had a huge impact on the community. And basically throughout this project, the question that we sought to answer was, what makes you feel more or less connected in Broomfield? After being given the prompts, we were given weeks to go out in our community, try to find points of connection and try to get those on film. So we captured these photos and we came back, and after a really long time of discussion and deliberation, we focused on a few key points that we thought best reflected needs in Broomfield. We then presented these to leaders in a walk around and audience reflection to a community of key leaders. In this presentation, we showed the community our photos and talked about our experiences and recommendations that we had for the community based on this prompt. Some of our recommendations were the need for more teen-friendly spaces and opportunities in Broomfield. These included reduced cost options, paid internships, and safe recreations and leisure spaces for teens in the community. We also recommended that the youth be more involved in the planning of new youth opportunities within our community.
So CTC has long prioritized the importance of pro-social opportunities for youth as one of our community's strongest protective factors against substance misuse and poor mental health outcomes. So we've continued to build on Y4Y's recommendations to enhance these opportunities in the community. And so all of this amazing work that they did served as the starting point for city leadership to develop the list of activities that you'll be seeing tonight. This process also allowed us to utilize the expertise of our CCOB staff, who continually provide programming and support for the young people in Broomfield and really have a strong understanding of the needs of the community. Once we had the list of activities, we brought this list to 3 different youth advisory councils for further input. So back to Y4Y, also to Teen Council and TAB, the Broomfield Library Teen Ambassador Board. We asked them to share their overall impressions of the activities, whether they thought these were appealing to young people, if there were any barriers to utilizing these programs and activities that we needed to consider in our planning, and if they thought these activities would help us reach underserved members of the community. Overall, they approved the ideas and seemed really excited about them. They particularly resonated with the fact that there was a variety in the opportunities in terms of different ages that could access them across locations, different interests and things that would speak to a variety of youth. They highlighted again the need for safe spaces for unstructured opportunities and felt that this list provided these opportunities. And now Saba is going to share some more thoughts on the ideas.
So I have served on Youth for Youth and TAB, so 2 out of the 3 advisory boards, and something that really stood out to me was the diversity in all of these groups. So there are many different people from different backgrounds, experiences, schools, school districts, so we can have a really good understanding of the different groups of people that live in Broomfield, and all of their ideas can be heard in the advisory groups. So the goal of all of these advisory groups are pretty similar. Their goal is to give back to the community through creation of opportunities for teens and other community members. So if we have internships at the library and Vantage HQ, youth would not only be in areas where community members already come together, but they'd also be in the community workforce. And then another idea was to have youth be able to access rec centers more. So instead of going to cheaper chain gyms, they're able to be at another center of community, and then to also hear about more programs that Broomfield offers.
So through all of this amazing collaboration between staff from different departments and our youth, and by extension, the community members that we serve, we feel that these proposed activities for this funding accomplishes 2 additional recommendations from Y4Y's Photo Voice project: that all youth need to be trusted and given a voice, and all youth deserve a place where they feel welcome and safe. Thank you very much for your time. And now to walk you through all of these activities that hopefully we've built some excitement about, I'm going to turn it back over to Dan.
I just realized that she said the excitement and then turned it over to me. So we probably should have had the excitement there. Next slide, please. So our with the recommendation and the advice of our youth in Broomfield and those groups that you heard about, we put together kind of 4 big buckets or 4 categories. One thing that I will tell you right now, and when at the end of this, we'll ask for some feedback and answer any questions. All of this is proposed right now. So we were putting together kind of a menu of options. Our preference would be to use all four of these categories. You'll see at the end how the dollars shake out, but I'll kind of go through them quickly. And then I've got all of our SMEs in the crowd too, that we can answer questions if you have some. So the first bucket was after school activities, and that's about $355,000. And in that category, we would do the extracurricular community opportunities. We really thought about how do we get this money back into the hands of our community. So this would be through two nonprofit organizations, one Broomfield Community Foundation and the second one, A Precious Child. Both of those organizations provided me with kind of some scope of work, if you will, or some proposals on how they would spend the money. Broomfield Community Foundation had two options. One would be kind of a endowment model where they would put a certain amount of money into the programs now and then invest some money to have a program in perpetuity. And things in that program for scenario 2 included like league sports, baseball, softball, football, frisbee, tennis, swimming, lacrosse. Also I-9 Sports, Broomfield Soccer Club, Thunder Baseball, Broomfield Blitz Football, Code Ninjas, School of Rock. Again, you'll see some really cool things, right, that all kids in Broomfield can be involved in. The other side of their list included things not necessarily sports related, but coding, arts, theater, music, dance, cooking, graphic design, fashion, maybe high school after prom parties, and the American Ninja or parkour courses, summer camps, and rock climbing. So that was in their option 1, or I'm sorry, in their option 2, which is my favorite. Option 1, they also provided some activities that would be more fast track. That would be more of an 18 to 24 month spending plan, and that money would go into vetted programs that are already out there. And again, they listed the possible recipients of some funding, and now it's a child song, backstory theater, Ball Swan, Big Waves, Broomfield High School Performing Arts. I'm not going to go through all of them, but Joyful Journeys, Out Boulder, Youth Scene, Dance Arts Studios. So a number of existing organizations that do youth activities. Again, that's why we're here today, to kind of see which direction council would prefer to go with that. What we have proposed is $200,000 would go to Broomfield Community Foundation, $100,000 would go to A Precious Child. A Precious Child had a 3-year spending plan where they would spend about $33,000 annually for all of their programs, including the Give Arts program, Give Sports program, Precious Perks, and the Precious Mentor program. So again, some pretty cool activities and opportunities for our youth in Broomfield through those two organizations. The other pieces of the after-school program are really related to the library. The field trip and bus fund for the fuel and bus fund for field trips, the author program for the Broomfield Library, Invent HQ, open hours for teens only, and then CSU, AmeriCorps, after school enrichment and Title I school. And then the second piece was youth employment and training. Again, you heard our youth talk about opportunities for employment in Broomfield. We would have some internships and some summer career exploration programs through our Workforce Center and Human Services, Invent HQ, teen assistance, auditorium summer teen assistance, and then some lifeguard and swimming instructor training classes. Next slide, please. And then another big one, youth-friendly spaces. This is really talking about designing outdoor activity space for our youth, for our teens, particularly. I know there's a lot of playgrounds in Broomfield for our younger kids, but more age-appropriate outdoor activity places for our teens who didn't want to use the term playground. They want to think of something more creative than playground. Kind of a revamp of the Broomfield Teen Zone, outdoor classroom space at the Depot Museum. And then the last bullet there's for increased costs of contingency. We added that to that overall construction cost for the youth-friendly spaces. And then the fourth bucket is food security, really working to get healthy foods and snack choices at teen activities across Broomfield, at teen locations across Broomfield, at the rec centers, at the library, so that all youth, not just our underserved, have an opportunity to access healthy snacks. And I don't know, I raised 3 teenage girls at one point and they're constantly hungry, and I can't imagine what boys might be like, but being able to provide some of those things for our kids in Broomfield. So the funds that we received were about 1.96 or 1.096 million. Our total proposal is about 1.06 million. That leaves about $34,000, and we put in there contingency or reinvest. One of the things that our group talked about is after 12 or 18 months, if we see a program that's very successful, maybe it's the auditorium internship, maybe we reinvest more money into that and put a few more kids through that. The other thing too is construction contingencies. We all know that construction costs are through the roof. So if we had a little bit of a buffer there, the ultimate goal though would not be to hold on to that money. It would be 12 to 18 months, figure out where we need to either use that for contingency or reinvest those funds. And some examples of that would be like our workforce experience program, any of the after school activities, our lifeguard training or construction. Next slide, please. That is it. So with that, I will be happy to or refer phone a friend to answer any of your questions. And then I think what we would like to walk away from tonight is either kind of a blessing or bring back some more ideas or charge forward with what you've got, kind of feedback from the body, from the board tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Casey. So comments from the public are first. So we're going to start with in-person comments first. If anyone would like to be heard, you can please come to the podium and state your name and neighborhood for the record. Then we would ask you to limit your comments to 3 minutes. Seeing no one, we will also take any comments from individuals joining phone. Do we have any? It's like we have no one on the phone as well. So comments and questions from City Council. We have any comments from our council members? Councilmember Henkel.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Yes, 18-year-old boys eat a lot of food, just so you know. Definitely have a football player who eats in our house and home. We can't feed him enough. Thank you all for coming in tonight. It's just been exciting to hear all of the outreach for our youth. I feel like personally, we don't have any skin in the game because this is all about youth. I feel like this really needs to be guided by the youth. I will say we do have a lot of refugee populations of our youth whose parents can't drive them. And even if you're not a refugee, we still have a lot of parents who can't drive. So I just want to make sure that there is accessibility. I did note on there that there are buses and fuel funds. I also think too, there could be some more independence in using our public transportation system as well. So just be thinking of those groups. I also know that there's another group specifically designed to help like youth mental health. And I know like sports is such a huge part of that. So like our Muslim Youth for Positive Impact is another group that takes a lot of our refugee kids and they take them to go do archery and those sorts of things. So just making sure we're opening it up to all the groups that kind of exist in Broomfield. And I just really enjoy the idea of sports and just the outdoor activities. I like the idea as well of having more like permanent spaces, because those are going to be some things that, just more accessibility for kids to hang out. Because right now they either hang out and go pay what seems like $1,000 to go bowling, right? Or you guys go hang out at restaurants or, things like that. And we've had a really tough winter, and I would really love to see our youth hang out in some sort of spaces that are indoors, that are really structured for the kids to have fun and really engage with each other in person and not on the phones. And I think that that's really important for their mental health. I've noticed, just as a last note with our refugees, they really do connect with activities. So you don't always need language to play soccer, right? You don't always need language to play football or, do some sort of ballet class. So I feel like this really reaches a population that might have language barriers too. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Henkel. Just want to quickly note that Councilmember Holston has joined us and Councilmember Leslie has also joined us virtually tonight. Councilmember Holston, you are up.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you for the presentation. I think that was a great explanation of all of the programs that we're looking to do with these funds. A couple questions. Is there a time frame on when the funds have to be spent? You mentioned the reserves. So I wasn't just curious.
Thanks for the question, Councilmember Marshall. No, there's not a time frame on when the money needs to be spent. There's a time frame on when we need to report back to the district on how it was spent or how it's going to be spent, and that's September of 23.
Okay. And then one other question is on the youth sports. You mentioned, as a parent, one of my older sons played Broomfield youth football, and it was really good for him because he wasn't very good, but he enjoyed the team atmosphere. But as anyone who's a parent with kids in sports understands, it's very expensive. Are those funds going to be used to offset the cost in any way for like the low income youth?
Yeah, again, thank you for the question, and I'm sure your son's happy that you said he wasn't very good at football. Yes, Broomfield Community Foundation has a plan to set up scholarships for all youth, whether they're lower income or not. I think it would probably be I would leave that up to Broomfield Community Foundation, but kind of a graduated scale, right? The lower the income, the more scholarship you could receive. Also, A Precious Child has equipment, sports equipment. I know that's very expensive too. Hockey, lacrosse, football, it's all very expensive. So they would be able to help with those expenses as well. And that would be the underserved communities.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. Councilmember Chef.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the presentation and the thoughtful deliberation. I thought the question that you all asked is such a great one. What makes you feel more or less connected in Broomfield? And I think that that's not only a great question that you all asked your peers, but it's a great question for our community. And I think that, especially as we come out of this pandemic and we continue to recover both as a community as well as individually, that is something that we should all ask and find those things that make us feel more connected. So I love that question. I'm going to ponder that myself and encourage others around me to ponder that as well. A couple questions. So with the extracurricular and community opportunities for youth via the community partners, I got to believe that there are some more partners out there that not only would be engaged, want to be engaged with our youth, but potentially could leverage other dollars that they've already gotten. And so how could potential partners connect with who could they connect with in order to signal that they're interested in this?
Yeah, I think thanks for the question, Councilmember Schaaf. I think two things. They could connect directly with me in Broomfield, or they could connect with the Broomfield Community Foundation. Again, if we move forward with providing money to the Broomfield Community Foundation, they can access all of the programs, all of the different activities out there that youth are involved in. What our plan would be is for us to give that $200,000 to Broomfield Community Foundation, and then they would re-grant that to other programs, other businesses, other groups. I think a couple just off the top of my head, I remember them talking about was like the Broomfield School of Rock, Backstory Theater. There was a couple others that they already had in mind to get the word out and keep the funds in the Broomfield community.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. And then one more question. So the team designed outdoor activity space, it seems like that there's a pretty big need, in this area. And this is a conversation that we've had for many years in terms of where teens are hanging out, some of the friction between the neighboring communities and those teen hangout spots. So I'm curious, with those teens that are already finding those spots within our community, how are we engaging with them to understand kind of what they're wanting to see and kind of the spaces that they're wanting to have developed?
I am going to phone a friend. Director Clay Shuck is standing behind me, and I'm going to ask that Laura and maybe Allison think about that question too. But I'm going to first turn it over to Clay.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, council members. Thank you for the question, Councilmember Schaaf. I think right now we're just kind of in that conceptual phase. If we start moving forward, we will not only engage with the designer, but also with the youth to make sure that those two are intersecting and that we're getting buy-in on the pieces of equipment that we're looking at in the space that we're looking at.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Appreciate it.
You finished?
I'll just add something if I can. Thanks. When we were having the discussions with Y4Y and Teen Council and TAB, I think that was the thing that across groups got everyone the most excited. With those different groups, there's people seeking out those opportunities for different interests. So kind of some things resonated differently with different groups, but that one was like exciting to everyone. So I think having just that starting point of ideas, they got really far into brainstorming, as you can imagine, with wanting to have a space that provided, tables that they could study at with charging stuff and, just a place that could be multi-purpose and serve a lot of different functions. And I think our intention is to continue to involve them in that planning process as much as we can.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to seeing how all of these come together and the conversations that ensue. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Lim.
Yes, I just wanted to say I appreciate the wide variety of different youth activities that are involved, that recognizing as the youth recognize that their peers have different interests. And so, they thought of their fellow teenagers and what they would be interested in. So I wanted particularly to highlight the workforce, since I'm assigned to the workforce board. And I appreciate very much that we put more funding in the career explorations funding and the internships for youth. There's a recognition that the youth need to feel a little more connected to their educational system after the pandemic and to their future career aspirations. So the workforce, from my knowledge of being on the board, does a good job of connecting those youth to those future career paths. So thanks. I'm glad we have that funding.
Thank you. So we have Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you. And Councilmember Schaaf asked my question about the outdoor activity space. I was very excited about that because I like the idea that we're thinking of using money for activities, but also something that will be around for a long time. And just want to make sure that that's like an engaging space, that like a productive space, not just a place where kids are hanging around, you want it to be something where you're not getting into trouble, you're doing something very productive there. So just thinking about that would be amazing. I appreciate that. And I know you're looking for feedback. I defer to you all. I think you're doing a great job and look forward to the end result. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from council? Councilmember Delgadillo. Did I get that right?
Yeah, you did.
All
Thank
right,
you,
first
Mayor
time.
Pro Tem. All right, and thank all of you for your expertise and your insight on this. I just had one comment about how I really like the idea of youth employment. As a kid growing up in Texas, I was lucky enough to participate in a youth employment program, and I went into college with a $1,000 stipend to go out with friends and buy, textbooks and do all those things that were really necessary for me to be successful in my education. So I think that is really impactful, obviously from a career exploration standpoint, but also like $1,000 is a big deal, or like a few $100 is a really big deal when you're a young person and you want to hang out with your friends and just go to Chipotle or something like that. It's a fun time. So I'm really glad that that's included.
Thank you. Councilmember Cohen, you have a comment?
Thank you, Mayor Tam. I just first wanted to note, I think it's to Broomfield's credit that we had such established youth advisory boards already in place that you could quickly do this and that the youth already have a strong voice in the community. I just wanted to echo, I think, what Councilmember Henkel was emphasizing in terms of equitable access. I think transportation is a huge issue in this community. There's lots of kids. They can barely get to school and many do not get to take part in a lot of these activities. And as we represent Ward 5, there is concern that we don't get left out. That a lot of these activities are pretty concentrated in this part of town specifically. So I hope as you go forward, you take that into account. And also wanted to note, can't speak to young Mr. Marsh Holston's athletic prowess. My son had a heart condition, so he couldn't play a lot of sports that were aerobic. So music was really important, and music is expensive too. And there's a lot of kids who would like to play music. My son was at Legacy High School, but didn't because they couldn't afford the instruments. And so if there's any way to make, in terms of access, make it possible for more kids to really participate and not be cut out of activities in Broomfield for economic reasons, that would be a really positive step and an outcome. Real quickly, and to that point, I wanted to clarify because I may have missed it. In terms of this teen designated outdoor activity space, are you talking about one space or multiple spaces that are hangouts, or has that been considered?
Good evening again. Thank you for the question, Councilmember Cohen. Currently, we're looking at one space. Just due to the cost, we would have to do the platform, the foundation of it, in addition to the equipment and the design. So really, that's going to probably take the money that we've designated just to have one space.
So to that point, since Broomfield's a weirdly shaped community with lots of points at either end, let's keep in mind the ability for all kids to get there. Thanks.
Thank you. Any additional comments, questions? No. Well, so I want to start by thanking the Broomfield Youth for coming down here tonight. You guys did a great job, first of all, and thanks for your work and inputs on this project. You guys did above and beyond, and leave it at that. But thank you again, and thank you, Mr. Casey, for your work. This had to be a fun project to work on. It's nice to have a windfall of money to allocate towards a good cause. Myself, I'm in favor of most of what you put out there. Definitely the teen spaces, outdoor spaces. As a father of 2 teens and 2 soon-to-be teens, I think that's a big issue. One thing I didn't question would be on food security. Was 10,000 enough to allocate towards that? Seemed like a pretty small number, and I know that's a big issue.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, for the question. I think, again, this was our kind of our best guess. We threw a number out there. I don't know if Allison wants to try to answer that or not, but, or Suzanne. We don't know. It probably is not. And again, that $30,000 kind of contingency or reinvest leftover, that would probably be a good place to look for opportunities there. If we thought, hey, 10,000 is only going to go so far, let's put a little bit more into it. We weren't talking about setting up like, meals every time. It was more healthy snacks, access to, apples and oranges and those types of things, as opposed to vending machine candy bars and sugary snacks. So best guess again was $10,000. It may need more. We may not spend it all. I don't know. So again, we'll be able to play with that as time moves on.
Thank you. And the other thing that I would echo Councilmember Cohen on the, providing, maybe subsidies or funds for music and the arts. I've definitely looked into like the School of Rock and places like that, and those can be very expensive to just on a monthly basis. So, somehow some sort of subsidies for that, for those that can't afford it would be great. And the one thing that did catch my attention was when you were mentioning the different sports and activities that may get funding. Some of those I know are for profit. So how would that work? I think Councilmember Holston sort of mentioned maybe would you be providing some sort of scholarships or subsidies, because I would be cautioning, I guess, just giving money straight out to some of those groups.
Yeah, I think that's the intent. And when I spoke with Broomfield Community Foundation, it would be scholarships again for the individual participating, helping them offset the cost of, whether it be I-9 or whatever the league that they're joining, so that there would be some ability for all kids in Broomfield to be able to play sports in those league sports. Again, I don't believe the intent, and I can bring information back to you at a later date after I get an opportunity to circle back with Broomfield Community Foundation. But I don't think the intent was to give the money to the organization. It was to have the money available for the participants to get a scholarship or to get funding to get equipment or, whatever that case may be that family needs.
Great. Okay, well, thank you. And again, thanks for your work on this project. It's definitely something fun to talk about, doing positive for the community. So I hope you receive some good constructive guidance here tonight. Okay, and thank you again for the Broomfield Youth for Youth. You guys did great.
All right, thank you.
Okay, moving on. As part of our petitions and communications tonight, I believe our municipal judge Bachman is in the audience, along with the new court navigator. Yes. If there are no objections from my fellow council members, I'd like to ask Judge Bachman to come to the podium to talk about the navigator program, which we are definitely excited about. Judge Bachman, you're heading to the podium, so please give us a brief 5 to 10 minute overview.
All right, well, good evening. First off, Mayor Pro Tem, council members. I don't have a formal presentation for you here this evening, but I never turned down the opportunity to talk about our Community Connections Court and specifically our new navigator. So before I get into the specifics of the Community Connections Court, I would like to introduce you to our new navigator, Aaron Zabodi. Aaron, if you could just give council a brief overview of where you come from, your background, and your involvement with the Community Connections Court.
Good evening. My name is Aaron Zabodi. I started with municipal court 1st of January. Prior to that, I worked for the state and state adult probation for about 15 years, where I supervised for the last 7 or so years high-risk, high-need females in a problem-solving court that was originated with Judge Bachman when Judge Bachman was on the county district bench. we started that program together. So this is exciting that now I am kind of coming full circle and working with her again and able to kind of design a new specialty court for the municipal system. Prior to working in state probation, I did work in a court ordered treatment facility for probably about, I don't know, 10 or so years, kind of while I went to school as well. So I have a lot of history with treatment aspects, resources, dealing with offenders of all levels. And so I'm excited to be in Broomfield now.
And I will be very honest, I mean, quite frankly, when we identified the need for a navigator here in Broomfield, Erin was the first person that came to mind. She is phenomenal. There is something about Erin that makes individuals who are vulnerable within our community gravitate towards her. It's really, it's amazing to see. And I saw it with the female offenders when we were working together in the state court. They would text her all hours of the night. They would text her and be honest and say, I'm about to use, I need your help. And for that relationship to be established with a probation officer is so rare. And it wasn't a one-off. I saw it all the time. So I knew when I came here to the municipal court and you gave me the opportunity to start a community connections court, she was the navigator that would make the court successful. And it's apparent now. So I'll just give you a brief overview on where we're at with Community Connections Court. Last year, before we had a navigator, we had about 27 participants. We had 10 participants in the Community Connections Court. And again, I'll just give you an overview of Community Connections Court. I know you all know, but Community Connections Court is a specialty court that we've established here in the municipal court that targets individuals who are struggling with substance abuse issues, mental health issues, food and housing insecurities, and other issues that quite frankly, are the underlying reason that they're appearing in court, right? So the idea is to address those issues so that number one, it helps them address their court case, but number two, it also enhances community safety. So it's a win-win for everyone. In 2022, before we had our navigator, we would have folks come to court every third Thursday of the month, and we would connect them with service providers that were willing to come to court and be there to meet with them. Health and Human Services, Mental Health Partners, Workforce Center, Broomfield Fish, and it was successful. But the issue is that there was no ability for follow-up and a way to sit down with individuals and say, now that we've connected you with those services, what else do you need to make sure that you follow through with getting that help? Do you need transportation to your mental health appointment? Do you need someone that can speak Spanish that can arrange for you to meet with Broomfield Fish? It's that extra step, that extra connection, that one focal point that they could circle back to if they were having struggles, even though we had already connected them with some of the services, just filling in the gaps. So before Erin started in 2022, we had about 27 participants in Community Connections Court. 10 of those participants successfully completed the program. 6 are still in the program, but the rest we lost. And the issue with that is trying to figure out why they weren't able to follow through with the services that we had connected them with. In comes Erin now. And I will tell you, just in January alone, we've had 17 cases. None of them have dropped off. None of them have warrants. All of them are still participating or have successfully completed the program. In February, 12 cases. And same thing, none have warrants, none have dropped out of the program. Some have successfully completed, some are still on the program. So the factor that really is constant with those individuals still being in the program and still being successful is the idea that when they don't show up for court, Erin makes the phone call. Do you need transportation? Is there some reason why you're not here? Why didn't you follow up with your mental health appointment? Do we need to schedule another one? And so she's that constant in their lives that I don't want to say is nagging them, but just is letting them know that she's there, that she's following up, that if they do need the help, that she can be there for them, that they can reach out. And again, it's a matter of Erin giving out her Broomfield cell phone number and connecting individuals when they need those services, whether it be at 9 a.m. or 9 p.m. And what's really interesting is that we now have 4 participants that don't have court cases, but have heard about Erin and have on their own come in and met with Erin to make sure that they're getting the services and hooked up with the treatment and help that they need before they even get a court case, which is even a bigger benefit as opposed to just hooking up individuals once they have court proceedings. And now we're trying to resolve those cases along with their underlying issues. So again, thank you all so much for the opportunity. It is working and it will continue to work. And I'm just excited to continue to provide you those updates.
Thank you, Judge. And it's not on my script, but do any of my colleagues have any questions for Judge Bachman? Councilmember Henkel.
Much for coming in. This is I love this. This is amazing. We talk a lot about, some people on council grew up like unhoused and to have that sort of constant in your life is very important. For me, it was librarians. And it's that sort of, first people that you really are in constant contact with. It's going to be reliable. Not everyone has a reliable source of information and a person in their lives for that. So that's makes me a little teary. I do want to just know, what does it look like to graduate from the program? What does that data show, and then how are we keeping track of the data? I would love to hear back some more on that. Yeah.
Want me to take that? Okay. So first of all, I appreciate your comments, and I will tell you, just to kind of build on that a little bit. So the Female Opportunity Program in state court was started in large part with the participation of Ms. Zabodi and other players, community members who came together, formed a board with the court, and then established a formal program. We're in the process of doing that now. But what I will tell you is that even the participants in the Female Opportunity Program that have since graduated or are still on the program but are not now being supervised by Ms. Zabodi, still contact her. Invite her to their weddings. I've been invited to weddings of FOP members. So you're right. It's that constant, because sometimes you just don't have that constant. And you need that stable person within the community that is there to hold you accountable, not just to cheer you on, but also hold you accountable when you're struggling. Successes right now in Community Connection Court can be something as simple as someone who's living on the street getting their social security card, getting their birth certificate, and now having the opportunity to apply for employment. Because you look at these individuals and you say, well, why don't you have a job? Why are you living on the street? Go get a job. Once you get a job, you can get a house. Once you get a house, you can, you can address your food insecurities. It's not that easy. If you don't have a driver's license, if you don't have an ID, if you don't have a social security card, you can't go get a job. So it's those basic things for some. Others, it's individuals that needed an MRI, that had long needed an MRI, that didn't have that opportunity for that medical treatment because they didn't know where to start to get the appointment. Aaron got them that appointment. So it's different. It's measured different for each individual. What we are doing is putting together a board now, a formal board with members of the police department, Health and Human Services, Broomfield Fish, mental health partners, and all of those community members coming together. And I know I'm leaving individuals out. The judge, the navigator. I can't remember who else is on the board. Have I left someone else out? Yeah, probably. But anyways, the idea is putting together this board. And then once we have the board, they'll staff cases right before court every third Thursday of the month. And we can say, we have Miss Smith here, and here's her circumstances. Can you provide information on what your agency can do to make her successful? And so then we'll get the buy-in from all the different services and the providers within the community. And that's how we can measure success. But right now it's different. I mean, we can't take an individual who's been living on the streets for years and say, you are not successful in this program until you're off the streets, have full-time employment, and have addressed all of your mental health issues. For that individual, success is getting them their ID, getting them stabilized with their mental health issues, and oftentimes addressing their substance abuse issues as well. That's success. And then we'll work from there. That doesn't mean they're off the program. That doesn't mean that they can't continue to use the resources. But as far as the court's concerned, that's a success. If that answers your question.
Yes, it does. Thank you very much.
In a very long-winded way.
That's okay. And the nagging, I think, is just momming. I think.
Right?
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other council members have a question or a comment? Okay, well, thank you, Judge Bachman. And I forgot your name. I'm terrible with names, and my script only says navigator. So I know you're the navigator.
Aaron.
And Aaron.
Yes.
Thank you both for coming down here. It's always great hearing about all the positive things and positive changes you're making in our municipal court system. So thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah. Okay, We're now moving on to public comment. This is an opportunity for the public to comment on matters other than the items that are already listed elsewhere on this evening's agenda. So in an effort to keep order for tonight's meeting, oh, hey, nope. Wrong one. If there's anyone who'd like to be heard tonight, I'm going to ask you to please come to the podium and state your name and neighborhood for the record. I'm going to ask that you please limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Bentley Cotter. I live in Broomfield, in the Broadlands at 14025 Blue River Trail. And I really think we should have a stoplight. Because if one car is coming out and one car is coming in, we can get into a car crash and get hurt. We can't have that in our community. And also stoplights keep everyone safe. Back in the day when there was no stoplights, people were getting into car crashes and getting really hurt. But now we have multiple stoplights. Only in my neighborhood, we don't have stoplights, and it is still very unsafe for us. Now I want to show you my poster. So, this is the traffic signal request, Sheridan and Meadow Mountain Drive. These are the city goals, policy 1 and policy 5. These city goals support a stoplight. The city focus on traffic signal warrants, and 3 warrants apply. The first warrant is 8-hour volume. So vehicles per hour on Sheridan is 220 cars in 15 minutes times 4 equals 888 vehicles per hour.
How do you know there's 200?
How I know is because I counted for 15 minutes and I counted the cars. And me and my dog were counting cars together as well. And warrant 2 is coordinated signal system, and stoplights more than 1,000 feet apart. I went to this stoplight. It was 935 steps times 27 inches equals 2,103.75 feet.
Why did you multiply by 20?
Because that was the length of my step, and I went to this stoplight and it was 887 steps times 27 inches equals 1,995.75 feet. And warrant for the last warrant is pedestrian volume. Broomfield is building a new park. Right here's where kids are going to try and get across the street to go to that new park, and the only way to get to that park is we need a stoplight. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bentley. I do appreciate that presentation. Is that poster board available for anyone to look at if we wanted to?
Can you leave it?
Yeah.
Okay, we appreciate that. Thank you. That was a great presentation. Good job. Is there anyone else who'd like to have a public comment on an item that is not on the agenda tonight?
Like her to fill out an application as you're leaving, Mom.
Is there anyone on the phones that would like to make a comment tonight? Seeing we have no one on the phones, we are going to move on to council's community and event updates. Does anyone from council have an update this evening? Councilmember Hinkle.
I don't know. My announcements are going to be so boring compared to what we just witnessed. I don't have a dog helping me count anything. That's amazing. Gosh, I love that. Yeah, she's definitely hired. I'm going to try to keep this quick. I hardly ever make announcements or, things like that, but we James Austin and I, or Councilmembers from Marshall Holshin and Ward, and I attended NACO, the National Association of Counties in Washington, D.C. about 2 weeks ago. And we are required to report back on some of the items that we learned and connections that we made. We took planes, trains, metro, and automobiles, and scooters as well. I was able to scooter in my heels this time. That was a lot of fun. And I applaud Councilmember Ward, who pushes me beyond my 47-year-old limits and says, hey, let's go get on this metro. And I'm scared to death because I live in Ward 5 and we don't have stuff like that. So that's pretty amazing. I'll highlight a few items. The conference spoke on many topics. Many from the stage were about the economy, incoming refugees, mental health, and more. We were all able to attend the first timers breakfast, and I was able to attend many learning sessions that focused on the economy, workforce, health and human services, education, immigration reform task force, and the summit on mental health. We were also able to attend a dinner with CCI, which is the Colorado Counties Incorporated, and we're trying to develop stronger relations with CCI. One of the major takeaways about the economy and the workforce session was making sure that we knew that semiconductor production would shift solely to being built in the USA. During COVID and after the pandemic, we noticed significant delays in semiconductor manufacturing. So the current administration is focused solely on shifting semiconductor manufacturing to the US. I was also able to attend the Immigration Reform Task Force. And they spoke a lot from the main stage about the refugee situation across the United States. So they had a whole immigration reform task force. And this forum was for county officials across the nation to discuss the impact of federal immigration policy on local governments. They noted that the 1952 immigration laws were outdated. The adjudicate existing claims for asylum, they had to hire about 3,000 I don't even know if I'm pronouncing this right, adjudicators, there we go, that's the word, to process asylum applications. Currently, we're about 4.3 years behind on our asylum application processing due to the Muslim ban by the former president. For those coming from Venezuela and the South too, they have emergency food and shelter from FEMA that went from $50 million to an increase to $80 million. And there's a new parole program in case people don't know about. People who are in Venezuela and those are in the south of the border can come into the United States as long as they have a sponsor. As much as I am actually upset that we are always putting this on our personal families here in Broomfield, a lot of families in Broomfield have actually stepped forward to take refugees from Venezuela and other countries. They do have to apply for the new parole program by or after January 6th, and they can obtain a parolee status. They are looking at also lifting Title 42 in May and putting Title 8 put back in place. Title 8, what happens is that puts consequences of going in and out of the US unlawfully, and it shifts behavior as long as we have increased programs to increase lawful entry. So it's more organized entry. So since March in 2020, when the COVID pandemic hit across the US, Title 42 order allowed border agents to just immediately expel migrants who cross the southern border on public health grounds. Title 42 is a public health measure and not an immigration enforcement measure and should not be extended indefinitely. Before the pandemic, Title 8 was the main resource for immigration authorities to decide to detain someone over the border, release them with some type of permit to seek asylum or other basis for humanitarian reasons. So whereas Title 42 excluded everyone from entering the country due to the public health concern, we no longer need that anymore. So they're assessing that. One thing that we did really have concerns with on both sides, we had a lot of people from DC to come in to talk about how Border Patrol and narcotics say that narcotics plays a huge role in our safety and the Border Patrol differences, and they have differences in agreements. But one thing that we noted is that no one wants criminals to come into the US, same for fentanyl and narcotics. So they are cracking down on that. And last but not least, I did attend the mental health session. I was only able to attend the beginning part of it because I had to go to Senator Bennett's office, Senator Hickenlooper, and also Representative Pedersen's office. But they did note in the mental health session that there's a huge desire to help improve the mental health epidemic for young females. They're noting a lot of high ideation for suicide in our female youth. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Lim, you are up next, and don't feel obligated to use your full 5 minutes.
Thank you. I wondered if staff could address Ms. Cotter's comments about the intersection of Mountain Meadow Mountain and Sheridan. She cited some statistics that she had done some counting at the intersection, and I know that we usually have done some investigation of those intersections also.
Miss Katie Allen is prepared to answer that. Our city county engineer, Miss Allen.
Still have the step up here. Yeah, good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, Council, Katie Allen, City and County Engineer. When I heard we were going to have a student come and do a presentation about the need for a traffic signal, I thought I was going to have the opportunity to discuss the manual of uniform traffic control devices and why it's important and the evaluation of warrants, but she clearly knows all about that and has done her own warrant analysis. We did ours in May of 2022. We did not get the same numbers. So I think the best thing to do would be to have our traffic engineer get together with her and compare their data to see the current situation for that intersection. Thanks.
Great. Thank you. My only other community update was to remind everyone that the Universal Collection Survey closes on March the 1st. If you have input about the future of waste collection and recycling in Broomfield. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Lim. We have Councilmember Ward.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Like Councilmember Hinkle and Councilmember Marsh-Holston, I also went to the NACO DC conference. That was February 10th through the 14th. So I, being the transportation geek that I am, focused mostly on transportation issues. So we had presentations from USDOT regarding the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant programs, which I am proud to announce that Broomfield has received an action plan grant that we will be using in the coming future to develop what does that Safe Streets and Roads for All in Broomfield look like that can be used for predominantly identifying how we can alleviate car and pedestrian accidents. We've been seeing increases of those over the past couple of years as automobile crashes have actually been decreasing. Or at least the severity of those crashes have been decreasing for automobile to automobile. We also discussed the Highway Trust Fund and how it has not been solvent for an extremely long period of time and passed some resolutions to, in the short term, make the trust fund solvent by increasing and indexing the federal gas tax. And then in the long term, switching revenue sources to capture all users and vehicles, especially since we'll be transitioning to more EV vehicles that don't pay a gas tax. There was a call for increasing funding for local bridges that were off highway infrastructures that counties and cities tend to bear the cost of. And then we had a presentation from the Coalition Against Bigger Trucks. They're advocating to cap the maximum weight capacity for semis. As the higher you go in weight, there is actually an exponential increase in the damage to the roadway, particularly roadways that like local streets that are not designed to transport 80,000 pound vehicles plus. And then lastly, we had from transportation, we had presentations on EVs and some of the interesting things that they're doing in that realm. And then there were other smaller things, not directly related to Broomfield, but ancillary to Broomfield with public transit. And then lastly, well, I shouldn't say lastly, I have two more things. Department of Energy gave presentations regarding some of the increases in tax credit they've had for fiscal years 23 through 32. Particularly, they're upping heating, cooling, and water heaters along with other energy efficient upgrades from roughly 10% cost up to 30% cost, or there's a increased fiscal cap. And then the last thing I want to do is we also had the opportunity to speak with Senator Bennett, Hickenlooper's office, and Representative Pedersen's office to advocate for increased spending or increased funding for the I-25 and Highway 7 corridor. particularly that interchange, it's going to be $200 million. And just Highway 7 in general, along with getting more infrastructure investments for EV charging stations. That was another big topic of conversation at this conference. But that's all I have.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Holstrom, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Just echoing what my colleagues have said, we attended the NACO conference along with them a couple weeks ago. I would say that Councilmember Henkel, that the metro in DC is not that scary. Having, I went to law school in DC, so I'm pretty familiar with it. So we can, do the maps and stuff. It was a great conference. Got to hear a lot of administrative officials, including the opportunity to hear President Biden speak about all the Inflation Reduction Act and bipartisan infrastructure bills that funding that is coming to local communities. Had a great opportunity to work with our other Colorado counties on these different issues. That included meeting with Senator Bennett and Hickenlooper as a group with all of us. But we also got to, as Councilmember Ward said, we also got to meet with their staff, just us, and advocate for transportation and water issues, among others. And then I also got to attend a couple sessions that were interesting. One was on the Inflation Reduction Act and about the financial funds that are coming to individuals and local and communities to increase sustainability measures. And so that was interesting. Got to hear what other communities were doing. And then also one on the electric vehicle infrastructure that is coming. So.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Chef.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor Pro Tem. I did not attend the NACO conference, so I have nothing to report there. I thought what was really cool is that, tonight we're witnessing not only our youth only listening and watching, but they're participating in their local government. And that's pretty awesome. So it's pretty rad. As we heard a speaker at the Bal Swan, a presenter talk about rad. So that is pretty rad. A couple of things to report. So the Rocky Mountain Metropolitan Airport Community Noise Roundtable, we are having our monthly meeting March 2nd from 6 to 8 p.m. One of the cool things that I wanted to update council on is that we're actually going to be considering our aviation consultant contract on this meeting. So that is going to be a big thing for us. The Broomfield Rotary Trivia Night this past Friday. I hope I'm not taking the Mayor Pro Tem's thunder on this, but council's team tied for 8th place. So that was a big jump for us. So we definitely showed up. No, there weren't that many, but we definitely did show up. It was a big accomplishment. And the last thing I wanted to report on is the One Book, One Broomfield Junior Program with their author talk. That will be this Sunday, March 5th at 2 p.m. Doors open at 1:30. So please come. It should be a great program. That's all I have, Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you.
And we did exceed our goals for the trivia night on Friday with the Broomfield Brain Trust and the Broomfield Rotary. It was a fun event. I think there were like 20 some teams there. So 8th place was, I was hoping to stay out of the bottom 5. So I think we accomplished that. Councilmember Cohen.
I just want to update Councilmember Schaaf. I think the term is drip now, not rad. So.
I've heard the word drip a couple of times too in my household. Any other updates? Okay, I guess we are good, and we are going to move on to the consent agenda. So council members' consideration of the consent agenda is next. The clerk will read all of the consent agenda items by title, and there'll be one opportunity for public comments and council questions and comments. Following the clerk's reading the consent agenda items 7A through 7G, we will ask for public comments. So will the clerk please read agenda item 7A through 7G by title?
7A, approval of minutes from the regular meeting of February 7th, 2023. 7B, resolution number 2023-30, request for authorization for the city manager to sign the elections remodel construction agreement. 7C, resolution number 2023-31, authorizing and approving an agreement between the city and county of Broomfield and Western Disposal Services, Inc. to provide the 2023 annual spring cleanup program. 7D, resolution number 2023-05, authorizing and approving an agreement by and between the city and county of Broomfield and Nichols Construction, Inc. for the construction of the US 36 bike and ride shelters. 7E, resolution number 2023-04, reappointing Amy E. Bachman as the presiding municipal judge and approving an amendment to her employment agreement. 7F, resolution number 2023-29, appointing and reappointing associate municipal court judges. 7G, request for an executive session for the purpose of providing legal advice regarding the Jefferson Parkway Public Highway Authority.
Thank you. So before we proceed, Manager Hoffman would like to provide an update regarding tonight's agenda. Manager Hoffman.
Appreciate that, Mayor Pro Tem. So after much deliberation internally, anytime something comes to where we're having a one-off, that I am able to sign something that is $1.4 million, clearly it gives me great pause. Our internal team, as we are looking at the election space, much like all of the conversations that we're having, that election space was really designed for a population of 40,000. Now that we're doubling that, it requires some pretty significant adjustments, and which doesn't include purchasing or leasing a new building, although we've been looking at that as well. So the adjustments that we were hoping to, they already take 2 of our conference rooms downstairs. I don't remember the last time you all were down there, but it's a pretty, it's a sizable room now, but during election time, particularly a general election, they are packed in there. And our election judges give such time, effort, talent, and energy for a stipend, if you will. We want to keep them safe. We want to keep the process where it's able to flow. All of that said, we need to make a significant investment and adjustment, thus the $1 million. But we're going to have a phased approach. So this year, we are going to use our internal team to make the adjustments necessary with regards to the logistics. So we're going to pull this item for tonight, and we'll come back to council. I'm looking over at our city county clerk. Probably the first of next year, when we have a much better sense of what that flow looks like.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. So 7B will be removed from the agenda tonight. We will now proceed with public comments, starting with any in-person comments. If there's anyone who would like to be heard, please come to the podium and state your name and neighborhood for the record. And please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Seeing there is no one. Next is public comment from individuals joining via phone. Please press *3, state your first name and last name for the record if you want to make any comments via phone. We have no one online. So does any member of council have comments on these agenda items tonight? Councilmember Lim.
Yes, I just wanted to make a comment on 7C, the approval for additional funding for the spring cleanup program. So we had a conversation at ACES about this. So that was considerate that the staff brought this to conversation at the last ACES meeting. The cost for this program, for the spring cleanup program, exceeded budget. And it was certainly the conversation at ACES that people, all residents in Broomfield benefited from the spring cleanup program in many ways, not just from a sustainability perspective, but from, tidiness and all that. The conversation though did, in the connection with the universal collection, went to the fact that perhaps if we did have universal collection, that this could be worked into the contract as with the hauler, that it would just be included, that spring cleanup would not be an additional cost. It would be part of our regular contract. And ACES did approve this with a motion to support staff's recommendation for the spring cleanup program, with the stipulation that it not impact sustainability's budget and associated projects. So I just wanted to bring that conversation to light. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Lim. Any additional comments, questions? Okay, so before asking for a motion, I want to remind everyone that item 7G tonight is a request for an executive session, and it does require 2/3 approval of the council. Is there a motion by council that the recommendations contained in the staff reports for agenda items 7A and 7C through 7G be approved? Councilmember Shaft,
So moved.
is there a second? Councilmember Holshan,
Second.
is there any discussion on this agenda item? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Anderson,
Yes.
Cohen,
Yes.
Delgadillo. Yes. Hinkle. Yes. Jazersky.
Yes.
Leslie.
So Mr. Leslie still online? Councilmember Leslie, are you there? I guess we just move on. Okay, moving on.
Lim,
Yes.
Marsh Holshan,
Yes.
Shat,
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
The results are 9-0 in favor, so that passes. Moving on, there is no business before the Board of Social Services or the Board of Health this evening. So it looks like the first item under council business this evening is a public hearing and council's consideration of proposed resolution number 2023-18, approving the North Park filing number 2 replat H, East Village, Parkside West, places 3 and 4, final plat and site development plan. I will now declare the public hearing open. We will follow the city standard public hearing procedures. First, staff will present a summary of the proposal. Next, we will have the applicant's presentation. Then we'll ask for public comments and final comments from the applicant and final questions from city council members. Council has a copy of the agenda memorandum, which I will ask our staff to summarize.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, and Anna Burton-Zetti will walk us through this item. She's the Co-Director of Community Development and Director of Planning. Ms. Burton-Zetti.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council. Anna Burton-Zetti, Planning Director and Co-Director for Community Development. This project this evening is a request for a site development plan and a final plat for phases 3 and 4 of the Baseline East Village community. We'll also probably be calling it the Parkside West area, so we'll use those interchangeably. It is about 32.5 acres on the east side of Sheridan within the Baseline development area. The project is immediately south of the previously approved phases 1 and 2 of East Village. The proposal includes a total of 232 residential lots. It allows a mix of single-family, attached and detached dwelling units. The proposal additionally includes publicly accessible private park area and a pedestrian network, providing connectivity to the greater Baseline development. If I could have the next slide, please. On November 10th of 2020, a final plat, site development plan, and subdivision improvement agreement was approved by the City Council to permit 232 residential lots within phases 1 and 2 of East Village, which is located immediately north of this proposal. This original approval in 2020 established super blocks and roadway infrastructure to allow for the future planning and phasing of the community to the south of phases 1 and 2. This proposed development is consistent with that original site development plan and will expand upon the previously approved and currently under construction phases 1 and 2. Next slide, please. The Brimfield Comprehensive Plan designated the subject property as mixed-use commercial, and this permits residential development when approved through a PUD plan process. The subject proposal is consistent with the comprehensive plan as well as the long-range financial plan. Next slide, please. The proposed residential development will occur in 2 phases. The first will be phase 3 to the north, constructed by phase 4, which is to the south. The proposed layout provides a mix of different lot sizes and arrangements, as I mentioned, both attached and detached single-family style. And the 2 phases are bisected by an open lands tract, which is called Tract W. This was previously approved when phases 1 and 2 of this development area were approved. A publicly accessible, privately owned park is centrally located within phase 4. And a robust trail network is also provided to allow connectivity throughout this area as well as to the greater Baseline community. Next slide, please. The North Park Managed Growth and Development Agreement, or MGDA, establishes requirements for land, public land dedication and the timing for that land dedication and the completion of the improvements within those parks. Individual projects are not required to incorporate public lands into their individual proposals, and so there's no public land dedication included within this specific phases 3 and 4. The project is adjacent to open land areas that are commonly referred to as the linear park. And the developer is currently working on the site development plan for portions of the linear park, including the Great Lawn, and will continue to make improvements to the open lands that are consistent with the MGDA requirements. The 0.79 acre publicly accessible private park is shown on the screen. This area includes a slide, play logs, pollinator hotels, as well as seating areas. The larger track W, which bisects the two phases and was shown on the prior screen, is designated more as a natural trail corridor and provides directional signage to help bikers and pedestrians to navigate the area. Next slide, please. Similar to the approved site development plans for phases 1 and 2 of this area, architecture has not been included in the subject site development plan and instead will be approved through individual administrative amendments to the site development plan. These modifications are first approved through the baseline design review committee and then are reviewed administratively by planning staff and with final approval by the city manager's office before proceeding to the city council. The city council would review these and may call the administrative amendment up to a public hearing if deemed necessary. At this time, there have been 3 administrative modifications that have been approved for architecture for the Parkside West community, for Dreamfinders, Berkeley Homes, and Boulder Creek Homes. Examples are shown on the screen. Next slide, please. The city council reviewed a concept plan for this during a public meeting on January 15th of 2019. Since the concept review meeting, the first 2 phases of this project have already been approved, as I mentioned, and the concerns have largely been addressed that had been expressed previously during the concept review. A neighborhood meeting for this proposed phasing 3 and 4 was held virtually on June 28th of 2022. There were 11 residents that attended the meeting and asked some general questions regarding the baseline development, and no other concerns were made regarding the subject proposal. Public notice requirements have been met for this project, and there were no key issues identified by staff. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you for that concise presentation. So next is the applicant's presentation. Just as we ask staff to keep their presentations brief, we do ask the applicant to be concise in their presentation as well. Will the applicant's representatives please identify themselves for the record before beginning their brief presentation this evening?
Good evening, council members, Mayor Pro Tem. I'm Mike McBride with McWinney. I'm the project manager for Parkside East or Parkside West phases 3 and 4. And thanks, Anna, for the great presentation. We've got a very similar one, but I think we can kind of highlight some of the kind of great design elements we have of Parkside West. So next slide. Just want to highlight the kind of the guiding principles of baseline. And it really is ingrained in the design of Parkside West. And it's kind of creating great spaces. It's kind of innovative housing types and development patterns, and creating kind of a new ecology for neighborhoods. And that's kind of our pollinator district, our open lands, and the way we kind of organize everything in the neighborhood. So next slide. Just to highlight where we are, on our grand vision of baseline here. Parkside West phases 3 and 4 is really the last tranche of residential development along Sheridan there. Parkside West phases 1 and 2 is under construction right now. I walked that today. Got half the roads in there, and so kind of we're marching south here. We've got Southlands on the bottom there, and we're working on getting kind of builders committed to that project, and then diligently working on Center Street District, and hopefully bring that to you here shortly. So next slide. Yeah, just kind of the neighborhood design aspects that we have for Parkside West. It's an extension of what we've done in phase 1 is phases 1 and 2. We've got an award-winning design team on this. And these are all kind of alley-loaded houses and townhomes. And they all face on kind of greenways, open space, or landscape streets. So the intent of, being able to walk out your door and walk, and have a sidewalk that connects you to the rest of the neighborhood, connects you to the larger baseline community, connects you to the larger Broomfield Regional Park. It's really important. And we did a lot of work with staff to make sure it was kind of a cohesive vision for this neighborhood and for the baseline community. So that's something I'm really proud of, is just everything feels like every lot is a good lot. Everything you walk, everywhere you live, you walk out into a nice space, you're connected to your neighbors, and you're connected to kind of the larger open lands areas. So just to orient you guys, phase 3 is on the right there. So, that'll be built first. Track W will be built with phase 3. And then phase 4 is on the left with that park. And then we have the affordable housing parcel on the upper left there. And so it's a good mix of different housing types with row homes, single family detached, and then the affordable housing will be more of a multifamily product. So a kind of good variety of housing types that will attract a kind of a wide variety of families. So next slide. Yeah, this is the park. We're calling it the backyard. And it's got all these cool mounds. It's got this slide with these terraces. So you can kind of just do laps on that thing and run up and slide down, run up and slide down. Kind of a central community gathering plaza, some hammocks, hammocks under the trees, and a lot of kind of nature play, elements that the kids can kind of just run circuits on. And so I'm excited for this. It's going to be a cool park for the neighborhood. Next slide. And this is something we worked a lot with on staff was the connections to the regional trail network from the neighborhood. So we did a lot of work on trail hierarchy and kind of trail widths. So you can see that our red trail there, that's our 12-foot wide. That's kind of our region. That's kind of our connection between the Broomfield Regional Trail and kind of the baseline regional trail. And there's a underpass under Sheridan right now. And so we'll build that 12-foot regional trail. It does swoop down. So you cross at an enhanced intersection with kind of concrete pavement and kind of that highlighted intersection. So trying to create a kind of a safe crossing, create a safe crossing zone right there. And then as everything branches off there, you kind of have wider sidewalks and they get skinnier and skinnier as you kind of get to your house. So it's trying to be this kind of gradient of trail sizes that kind of makes sense as you get to the larger regional trail. Next slide. And then this is just the kind of our overall trails diagram that we're refining with every single submittal we make. And so it kind of outlines what the basic framework of our trails are. But as you can see, in that pink outline, this track W 12-foot trail, it connects that Broomfield Regional Trail and our baseline regional trail. So it'll be an important connection. We have the underpass under there under Sheridan, and it'll be kind of a major thoroughfare through connecting those two trail systems. Next slide. And then just want to talk a little bit about our linear park system. I'm working on those too. So I'm hoping next time you see me, I'm here with some linear park STPs. The orange and the pink are both under review right now. And we're working to get our phase 1, which is our big green, our kind of big community gathering area. We're working to get that under construction this fall. So, we really want to start kind of creating some amenities out there for the whole neighborhood. And then phase 3, which is in the blue, that's kind of the next stage of design that we've got our park designers working on. So just want to give you an update on where we are in our linear park design. Next slide. And then just to talk a little bit about architecture, as you kind of see, we have these kind of clustered, kind of urban neighborhood with, small lots. These are 1,200 to 2,500 square feet. And so you're surrounded by open space. So they're trying to be these kind of clustered neighborhoods with generous open space around them. And the architecture is, it's kind of what's being built out there. It's generally 3 stories, tightly knit together. And so it does kind of create these this kind of cool architectural texture, especially in contrast to some of the open areas. So, if we look at the next slide, this is an extension of next slide. This is an extension of the architecture we already have being built out there. You see our 3 model homes under construction right now. And kind of the way they get built together does create a kind of a cool architectural massing for these neighborhoods. And next slide, I think that's it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Mr. McBride. We'll now proceed with public comments, starting with in person. If there's anyone who would like to be heard, please come to the podium, state your name, neighborhood for the record, and limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Hi, Roxy Jula Lacamora. Baseline has no services for Baseline. All the people, they can live there, but they have to go and buy everything from someplace else. Luckily, we do have a little bit in Broomfield for them to get gas or fast food or something like that. Their main things, there's nothing for Baseline. On top of it, phase 1 and phase 2, there's really not much there. I'm around it at least 2 or 3 times a week. And it's like slow motion. And once again, it's still just residential. So I'm all for the parks. I'm all for the trails. It would be wonderful if there was something out there, but there isn't anything out there. The wildlife has lost a lot of their area to live and stuff with all the construction. So that's kind of been a bad thing for this also. So if there's any way at all, if you can deny phase 3 and phase 4 until they catch up and give something back to the Broomfield community, including their own residents, it would be nice. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jewell. Are there any other comments from the public? Person? No. And next would be comments from individuals joining the phone. If you're wanting to speak and you're on the phone, please press *3, state your first and last name and neighborhood for the record. We do not have anyone on the phone. So would the applicant like to address that one comment from the public?
Yeah, sure. So I'm on the Center Street District team, and trust me, we are working on it. So it's we've got some promising kind of tenants that we're kind of designing the plan around. And again, that Center Street is intended to be a kind of a mixed use district with higher density residential, retail, and office. And maybe some entertainment uses. So, that's kind of our downtown of Baseline. And the intent is that's a walkable core for Baseline that everybody can is able to get to without hopping in their car. We've got these kind of great greenways, kind of great pedestrian network to get you there. And so that's it. It's coming up. It's coming soon. So
great. Thank you. So questions from council are next. Members should limit themselves to questions during this portion. The time to introduce amendments and state positions for and against an item is later. So are there any questions from council? If Councilmember Ward.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. So thank you so much for bringing this forward to us. I'm really happy about the underpass going under Sheridan for safe crossings for pedestrian and bicyclists, as well as the wide bike ped lanes that are predominantly separate from traffic where that's appropriate. But I do have a couple questions. So you noted on the presentation that there is going to be on-street and off-street parking. How much off-street parking are you anticipating? Because I assume when you meant off-street parking, you meant for visitors that do not live there.
Correct. So we have, we kind of got three parking strategies. We have on, the on-street parking that's available on the city roads. We have kind of guest parking spaces in those alleys. So all the houses are served by private drives. So everything kind of, you kind of go to the back of all the houses. We have kind of strategically placed parking spaces in there for, it could be a delivery driver, it could be your friends, whatever. And then each house does have kind of a 2-car garage, that accommodates the parking required for the actual house. So there's kind of 3 kind of parking options for the neighborhood.
So barring the parking that's within the garages and in the driveways, how much would you say is actually there for parking for visitors?
Well, including the street parking, I would say in each neighborhood, there's probably 40 to 50 spaces.
Okay.
That's off the top of my
The
head.
reason I asked that is in the presentation, or at least the packet that we got, you have provided 6 spaces for bikes. Now, I realize some people may be able to, this is for visitors. I'm not talking about people that live there. I know they're going to put their property in their home. But for those that are visiting, they may not be able to put it in someone's garage because that garage may be full. And you've only provided them 6 safe places really to park a bike. And we're trying to incentivize walking and biking when they can't even park that bike if they want to go bike, let's say from somewhere else in Broomfield into that neighborhood, or they're coming off of eventual Highway 7 BRT.
Yep.
Is there any plans to accommodate that, or is biking just kind of the afterthought here, really?
No, I get what you're saying. I think the bike spaces that we probably counted are probably in the park, in that private park. So, I guess if I was living there and I had visitors come, they do have, the architecture is pretty consistent with their porches. So that's kind of where I would tell my friends to kind of lock up their bike, is lock it up to the porch. But it is tough because the bikes do take up a lot of space. That bike parking does take a lot of space. So it is tough to provide kind of a bike parking spot per house,
They don't take as much space as a car, though.
They don't. But as far as like hardscape versus landscape kind of area, so.
Anyways, so my next question is in regards to the density. This is along the Highway 7 BRT corridor that we've identified, and ideally, or at minimum, you should have 25 units, density units per acre. And this only has 23.6. And I take, an issue when we can't even meet that bare minimum. And ideally, we should have 30 units per acre. And we're still having, granted, much smaller single family homes than what Broomfield has traditionally happened. And I appreciate that, but there should have been even more density. This is completely green space. It's not really near other developments that are going to be impacted, quote unquote, by having a higher density. And we're trying to get BRT on Highway 7, and we need as much units there to really justify having that corridor as a true BRT corridor. So is there a reason that you didn't go with a higher density in this particular neighborhood, considering it's less than a mile from Highway 7?
Yeah, and we totally understand the sensitivity to that, and we've gotten a lot of comments about density. When we brought Parkside East forward for a concept review, we kind of did a thorough density analysis of what has been built in baseline, kind of what we have proposed, and I think it told a pretty good story of kind of a density gradient that we're proposing from Center Street all the way down to Southlands. And if you start at, I don't have the exact numbers, but if you start at Center Street, we're at like 73 DU to the acre in those residential blocks. And as we move south, it does get less dense, but I think that was our strategies. How can we focus our density around that BRT that's proposed in Center Street District? And it does kind of bleed out a little bit as it goes south. So we have some pretty good data about that density analysis. And I'll make sure it's in the slides next time. So.
Well, I remember that density
Yep,
analysis from the previous presentation. I still think it would have been more beneficial for us when we're trying to really get BRT, that we have as much density as possible, particularly also for environmental purposes. We know that denser developments do have a slight energy efficiency benefit, particularly attached townhomes, because they can share heat. And you're also using just less space in general to get the same number of people in, which reduces your amount of concrete and asphalt and taking over nature's place that can then absorb some of that heat. But I digress from that. The last thing I want to address is, again, why have you decided to put the affordable units all in one building, separate in a corner that will kind of stand out, and not done a better job of incorporating that into the community, particularly when we do need affordable for sale townhomes and condos, and probably even single families for this, since probably going to go forward. So why did you decide to go with that model instead of trying to incorporate more into the community?
Yeah, again, we heard this at the Parkside East concept review, and we came back from that meeting and we tried to crack that nut. We kind of said, okay, how do we've got our development team, we've got our kind of builder liaisons, how do you get a builder to kind of build affordable housing? And if Kyle were here, he'd have a much better answer. But with having that tract of land, and with the kind of the financing mechanisms that are available for affordable housing, it makes a lot more sense to be able to provide a tract of land for affordable housing, versus trying to kind of make our builders build something not to market. So I think that's my best answer. Next time Kyle is going to be here, and he'll help me answer that. So.
Okay, well, I think the only thing I really have to say on that is I wish we could have done a better job of incorporating that, because we do need those for sale affordable units that are townhomes and even single family homes for our residents. Not everyone wants to be a renter forever, even though I'm a renter and my fellow council member to my left is a renter. But in America, the only way to build wealth is owning property. And I think we should do a better job of trying to make that happen for people. Thank you.
Yep, I get it.
Thank you. Councilmember Chef.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. So you talked about the Center Street retail district, and I'm curious, can you give us some more specific timelines? I think this is one in which we, have been promised the commercial aspect of this development, and we saw a little bit of a plan. It was very underwhelming. So I'm curious, can you provide us with some more specifics on timelines of when we will see that? And can we expect that this is going to be a much more robust commercial and retail Center Street district?
Yeah, so I'm in charge of the schedule for entitlements for Center Street District. And let me just tell you, it's slipped a few times. So I think, we've got some tenants that we're trying to get kind of locked into that plan. And that really kind of pushes that whole thing forward. It gets all our butts in gear. So the big focus right now is to kind of get some of those bigger tenants kind of signed up for Center Street District. But my current schedule has us coming in this summer for it. So like I said, that schedule slipped a few times already, but that's when I'm pushing for it. So
great. And just to clarify, that's not on our staff. The reason that slipped, that's on the developer.
That is not on you guys.
Perfect. Thanks for that clarification. We had I believe that we had approved a commercial building at Sheridan in Colorado 7. What's the status of that building construction?
Sheridan, Colorado 7.
It's going to be a construction building.
I think that one. No.
Councilmember Schaaf, I think you might be referring to a project that we saw for a concept review for a few years ago.
Okay.
Right, and that project did not move forward.
Okay, all right, thanks. Are there any updated plans for that corner there? It's a pretty visible corner. commercial?
Yeah, no, that's kind of phase one of Center Street District is that corner, but and then any office users that we do get interest from is, we're trying to pull into the Center Street District project, so.
Okay. I'm curious with the administrative approvals for the architecture modifications and review. I'm just curious, is this something that would expedite the development review and approval process? Or what is the rationale for doing it this way as opposed to seeing it tonight?
I'm going to have Ms. Burton-Zetti answer that question.
Happy to answer that question as well. So we've done this a few times in the baseline development. McWinney is not they're not the home builder. And so they sell their lots to particular home builders. So as they're working through the development, they obviously are working very closely with potential home builders for their communities. But those sales may not occur until after the final completion of the site development plan and final plat. And at that time, then we see the final architectural renderings from those individual builders. It allows kind of a focused review on that architecture. It goes through a pretty rigorous review with this private design review board that Baseline runs. We do have a staff member on that board as well. And then it comes into staff for a focused review. And then, as I mentioned, goes to the city council as an information item via email to have an opportunity to review and call up if there's any concerns or needs additional review. So it allows for a more focused review, and in that way is a more expedited process for individual builders and allows for the master developer not to be held up waiting for their builders to finalize their architectural plans for their individual models. So in that way, it is somewhat of a more expedited, streamlined process for both.
Okay, great. Thanks for that answer. I think that that's, definitely a statewide concern right now is the slowing down of projects. So this sounds like that is continuing to move this forward. My last question for the developer is snow removal on those private drives and to staff kind of on top of that question, is this clearly understood who is responsible for the future maintenance and care of these private drives in this neighborhood? I would assume eventually the HOA is going to take over for the Metro District. So if you can talk a little bit about the snow removal on those private drives and what that's going to look like, is that going to be the responsibility of the Metro District at that point?
So currently it's the Metro District is responsible for it. Long term, it would get kind of absorbed by the HOA. This is a pretty good year for snow. So we're learning some lessons on how to create areas for snow removal. So we're making sure that kind of our landscape areas are appropriate for, kind of these big piles of snow that aren't going away like this year. So.
And just to follow up with staff, is this clearly delineated in terms of the future maintenance and responsibility of these private drives, that is the responsibility of the Metro District and the HOA, so that in the future, we aren't going to have some type of disagreement that this should have been the responsibility of the city?
We learned many things along the way over the last 3 years with business development agreements. Ms. Burton-Zetti?
Yes, this is very well documented, as was noted. We've learned a lot of things along the way, and documentation is one of them. Very important.
Great. So, thank you so much. Mayor Pro Tem, that's all the questions I have.
Thank you. Councilmember Holstein, you were up.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. So I just want to say that I think we're all excited for the baseline development to come forward and we want to see it succeed. But I'm going to ask, my questions are kind of along the line of Councilmember Ward's questions regarding the concerns about both the density and the affordable housing. So I have a couple of questions on the affordable housing part of it. Am I reading this correctly that this does not include those 240 units that are proposed for this section?
Thank you for the opportunity to clarify, Council Member. That's correct. A separate site development plan and actually a separate concept review even would be required prior to consideration of those, the project for that parcel.
And question for the developer. So along with Councilmember Ward asked, can you go into a little more detail about why we're not incorporating these into the development rather than just kind of sticking them off to the side?
I don't have a great answer for it. It's a lot. It's got a lot to do with the financing of the project. The way licked financing, whatever. And then, you know, just even coordination with our builders, you know, how do we get a builder to build a below market for sale townhome? And, you know, we kind of say, what does McWinney have to do to make that happen? And it's kind of like, well, we have to give them the land, you know, how do we subsidize the creation of, you know, the construction of that townhome? So, trust me, you know, we had our team try to crack that nut, and it is tough. And so that's why it's tough to do kind of everywhere in the country. So, you know, we're partnering with, Broomfield Housing Alliance and Medici, these are affordable builders, and trying to kind of give them all the tools they need to be able to build a project. You know, just, I think we've got a meeting in a few weeks, but talking with Kyle and that group, it sounds like, you know, that's a tough project to make happen too, especially with the kind of the construction costs we've got these days. So.
And along that line, I understand we're not looking at the SDP on these affordable units, but is it your intention to have the amenities available to those units the same as what is available to the general population? For example, this proposal has more EV chargers than what we currently require. Is that going to follow into the affordable housing areas too? The private park that you have right to the south of the or right to the, I guess, the east of the affordable units, is that going to be available to be accessed by the residents of the affordable units?
Yeah, you know, that was a lot of staff was sensitive to the connections we were making and kind of the amenities provided to, you know, close to the affordable housing parcel. If you kind of look at our site plan, you know, the backyard, our publicly available private park is kind of right next to that. We've got a trail corridor that leads right to the linear park. You know, we've got connections to our regional trail right there. So it was definitely something we worked through with staff on how to make sure that that affordable parcel felt integrated within the community.
Okay, thank you. And then one final question on the density. You mentioned the kind of phasing the density down as you move south. Why did we not go higher even than, you know, why did we need to do that? Why did we not do, you know, you said over 70 in Center District, why not do 30 or 35 in this area rather than go all the way down to 23?
Yeah, you know, I think if you look at the lot sizes and the housing types we have, you know, we've got a mix of multifamily housing, we've got row houses, we've got these 26 and 37 foot single family homes. So we're trying to create kind of this wide variety of housing types in Broomfield. And even in our next phases, we've got, you know, more multifamily housing coming in, which is kind of that 3 to 4 story kind of for rent housing product. So, you know, baseline, you know, kind of in baseline, trying to create as many kind of different housing types as we can to serve all the different kind of families that are out there. So.
Okay, thank you. That's all my report.
Thank you. Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you. I do have a few questions here. The first one is going back to the Center Street District, and I live in Anthem Highlands. So, you know, this is very close by, and hear a lot of the concerns of the community that lives up there already. And when they see the next phase being more houses, everybody, as others have already mentioned, are ready for Center Street District. They're ready to see something other than more houses. And one thing you didn't mention was a grocery store when you're talking about the Center Street District. Is that still in the plans at all?
That is the linchpin of the whole plan. So that is, you know, that's kind of what we're focusing on is getting that grocer kind of integrated into that, the design of Center Street. Yes.
Okay, excellent. That's I know it's important to the community up there, because right now the closest grocery store is just outside of Broomfield. Okay, and then also the unique dining experiences are still high on that list. I was glad to hear you mention the entertainment, but you keep in mind there's a lot of residents that are ready to find that location where they can go out for dinner. So keep that definitely in the plans. Now the biggest concern that I'm hearing right now, besides the wanting that Center Street District to move forward, is the traffic. And this is becoming almost unbearable in some ways, as we're looking at 160th, the widening hasn't occurred yet, which was only going to be part of 160th, but is that was supposed to occur last summer. Well, PRA was out of school. It was delayed due to various reasons. And is that on track to be done this summer?
I'm gonna call Mr. 160th over here.
Okay, thank you. And along with the 160th is that lower section, that section of Sheridan just north of there, that would also be widened, I'm assuming.
Correct. Jim Nimchak, Vice President of Land Development for McWinney. 160th is my baby, so I'll answer all your questions there. So as you may recall, 160th was tied to Southlands, and Southlands has taken somewhat of a deferment as far as us starting that project. But 160th also is triggered specifically by the industrial buildings that are facing that location. I know the email traffic this week is that the city engineer's office is getting all the notices and the vehicle messaging boards for us to start the closure at the very end, middle of April and go all the way through October is the notices that we're providing right now. And those plans are approved and ready to be built, and we bid that work. Sorry.
Okay, so that would be just before the school, and I'm hoping that there's a plan for maybe it's the city and county part there to just work with PRA and others that this is going to cause a traffic major congestion area on
yes.
school morning. So, but I'm glad to hear it's going to go forward over this summer.
I would add, we've got a very big matrix that we're sending information out to both Amazon as well, because they have been very vocal about that closure timeframe as well. So we've got private businesses and everybody else. Yes. They want
we use that road every single day, multiple times. So that's a key area. And then also Colorado 7 is in desperate need. And there's a lot of updates in the packet on what was being done on the north side. And then just curious, like what's being done on the south side of Colorado 7. There's it's not in good shape right now.
Yeah, the main expansion on our side would come with Center Street. We do expect that frontage improvement to be done between our access points in our first phase for Highway 7. That would also include any of the intersection improvements and auxiliary lanes, turn lanes that would be necessary for Highway 7 to support Center Street. So there'll be quite a bit of traffic modeling to make sure that that's a safe. There's both a 3/4 intersection and a signalized intersection in phase 2 on Highway 7 that would come from Center Street.
And do you know if there's any plans for an underpass at all under Colorado 7? That might be a coordinated effort, but I know there was at one point by like the Huron Street realignment.
Yeah, I do participate in the BRT work group that's also the city's involved with CDOT. There is a grade separated crossing that has been discussed at the location of Center Street, and we are embracing that BRT stop within our plans. In fact, we're making it a highlight of our focal point of the Center Street plans. I think there's a lot of discussion whether it's an underpass, grade separated, or an overpass, depending on the room and the availability that's there. But I would rely on the city's group probably to say where that final decision is going to land.
Okay, thank you. And then also I think that's all for the traffic. Okay, and then the other question is regarding solar, and that won't be your question, I guess. I would back to Mr. McBride, but I know a lot of homes are being now built with solar installed on the roofs. Is there any plan for solar on the roofs?
I don't think out of the gate by the builder, but you know, like kind of some are efficiency standards for the housing is kind of EV ready and you know, kind of solar ready stuff. So.
Okay, and then one final question, if anybody has an answer to this one, is there still plans for an internal? I think it might be helpful to some of our newer council members. There was previously a discussion of that internal router back quite a while ago.
Like
Is
the
there plans?
autonomous shuttle.
Yeah, is there still plan?
It is. It's a long-term vision, but you know, it's trying to be kind of internal to baseline, connects you to Center Street District, you know, kind of roams the neighborhoods and picks you up. So I don't know if Elon has invented it yet, but.
Okay, and thank you. I'm glad to know that the next, hopefully the next development that comes forward will be not hosing. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Councilmember Lim.
Yes, I did have, I was pleased, I think it's Councilmember Marsh Horsham pointed out that we have a lot of EV ready spaces. I'm just curious, did you work with United Power at all? They had builder rebates at one time for, not too long ago, for EV installation.
Yeah, I think our builders will all work with them on the infrastructure. I know at our level, we're looking at kind of a backbone level infrastructure to make sure, you know, if everybody gets a EV and they all plug it in at the same time, that, you know, baseline still works. So, but that's kind of our main initiative, is make sure the backbone infrastructure is there to support that.
Okay. Is it up to the at your level plans or at the plans of the building, the baseline design review committee, which entity decides what kind of building codes you use?
Councilmember, all of the buildings within the baseline community will follow our adopted codes. Currently, that's the 2018 building series. City Council will be considering next week moving to the 2021. As the state finalizes their energy code model code in June, City Council might be moving towards or considering moving towards the adoption of that adopted model code coming from the state. And if that were to be the case, anyone coming in to build within the baseline community would have to also abide by that energy code as well as any strengthening amendments that might be adopted.
Okay, so I'm looking at the timeline. So when we approve this phase 3 and 4 SDP today, is the requirement to follow the 2018 IECC building code because we're not passing the final reading until next week?
Thank you for the opportunity.
21?
Yeah, to clarify the question, no, the code that is applied at the time of the building permit. So it would be likely the 2021 and potentially even with the state adopted code.
Great, that's helpful. Thank you. That's what I want to make sure. I did look back at the July 20 amendment number 5 that the memo referred to, and the sustainability plan that at that time that baseline referred to was broader as far as, I mean, I appreciate the EV installation and I appreciate the pollinators, but I mean, it was broader. The plan said they were going to use energy efficient infrastructure, renewables, and they were going to use solid waste and recycling during construction, which is another step. And I know in the construction phase that eventually we hope to have code for in Broomfield. So, you know, the plan that we looked at in 2020 certainly had broader goals than what we're looking at in just this SDP. So I'm hoping that, you know, somehow when the building review committee gets together and looks at the architecture and what the builders in particular are planning, the specific builders, that we get down to the details of, can we do a little more with, make sure we're doing that solar ready and that kind of thing.
Yeah, you know, in a way that we kind of help manage that with the builders is kind of set this standard HERS rating, which is kind of a housing efficiency rating. And it does give the builders some options on how to achieve that. So, you know, whether they do with energy efficient appliances or solar power or you know, solid waste, you know, the way they construct the project and divert materials, you know, out of the landfill and stuff like that. That's the best way for us to control some of the efficiency standards with them without giving them kind of a really prescriptive menu of how they have to do it. So.
Okay. That's great. Thank you. And the IEC 2021 code that we've looked at now, we're about to pass, gives options too for energy efficiency. So it would be the same theory there. This is for staff. There was a resident email that was in the communications folder that came in where a homeowner had a complaint with the developer that he had damage to his home or his property because of some further development from townhomes behind his David Weekly home. So I'm just curious. I don't think this group is ready to address that right now, but when we get as staff, when we get those kind of complaints, I mean, what do we do with them? The resident was requesting that we actually not approve this because of his grievance with the developer, but I am curious, what do we do with those as the city?
Thank you for the opportunity to answer that question. We do receive occasionally complaints regarding construction activity. There's a lot of disruption, traffic, materials being stored, vehicles in and out. There could be noise concerns, or potentially sometimes there's damage that occurs on private property due to activity in the area. And when that happens, we follow up with the individual builders. We follow up with the resident and find out more information. We try to figure out which builder we can understand might be responsible and talk to their superintendent and make sure that that builder communicates directly with that resident to resolve the issue. But that is our typical policy, is to try and make sure that we're finding, in this case, because Baseline McWinney is the master developer, we're usually looking at an individual builder, and there's multiple in the same area. That helps to add variety to the neighborhood and diversity to the street block. But it does mean that we need to be a little careful about making sure that we're getting to the correct builder that's responsible.
Okay, that's good to know. There's staff follow-up. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Henkel.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, and thank you for bringing this forward tonight. I'm looking forward to the development, and I appreciate my fellow council members' questions, particularly on this idea that we need to incorporate more affordable housing in all of our spaces. So in the future, just be very mindful of that. We are appreciative, obviously, of the affordable housing. We have a lot of people in need. I will say that I have concerns just in general. I've been sort of elbow deep in metro districts and trying to understand this representation, right? So I have noticed, like up in the Palisade area, we have a developer up there, and all of a sudden we're adding people onto a metro district representation list that are all developers. And then there was no minutes from the meeting. What's the plan on metro districts in this area? Is it all one large metro district? And what does that look like when we're phasing in homes and then representation as people are moving in and so on?
So I get to spend the district's money most of the time, and that's not in jest. We do it all obviously through a process that we actually take very sacred. The district, in our case, both constructs and does all the budgeting and all the work. So it's really in many districts you see developer-led construction that's reimbursed by the district. We do ours above board to the point where the district actually does see every contract, approves every contract. And I'm saying all that just because there's a lot more transparency and record, specifically as part of those board meeting minutes, public bidding processes, et cetera, that go along with those pieces. So we don't manage districts the same way you see a lot of other districts being managed. That is one way we differentiate ourselves. We do have I'm not an expert on how many districts we have, but the multiple district structures do allow for earlier entrance of residents onto boards. And that's in many ways, I've been parts of boards where residents were there and all of a sudden all 5 were residents, and there's a certain amount of background that you want board members to have. So we do actually embrace pulling on board members as soon as we can and to educate them through the process.
Okay, so when are residents notified? Are they notified before they move in, or what's that process? Or do they move in and then all of a sudden, they're paying more towards the metro district because we voted, to pay more, and they weren't a part of that process? I just want to make sure it's very transparent and that they're able to engage, the moment that they make a commitment, to live in that place.
I may defer to staff on this specific question, but I do know in most cases the presence of districts show up on staff report or on title reports, and also as part of the disclosure requirements from each subdivision. We have various ones. I don't know what the ones are in this location, but I don't know if you could.
Yeah. Can staff just address that a little bit more? What does that look like if I were to move in and be notified if I could, run for position on a metro district?
Council member, I'm not sure if someone else might have a little more knowledge about the management of the metro district and election procedures. I don't think that's part of the disclosure that goes to a potential homeowner. They are notified that there is a metropolitan district. And then through their own means, if they wanted to look into how that representation occurs and how to go about seeking election to the board, that would be on an individual homeowner who was interested in following that process. I don't think that the notification provides those steps or that guidance specifically.
Councilmember Hinkle, it's much like when you're moving into the house and you look at what school district you're in and what the mills are for that school district. We all know that I don't want to quote the percentage because I'll be wrong. But Broomfield is built on metro districts. The reliance is significant. And I don't say that with negative connotations, but I don't say with positive connotations either. So from an election perspective, I know that Councilmember Lim and Councilmember Schaaf were instrumental in really focusing on the Dillon Point project for what that and when the transition occurred, and that no other additional decisions for the Dillon Point Metro District until residents were on, and we built that into those agreements. Metro districts are tough, but I don't think we ever want to be in the business of being responsible for notifications or disclosures regarding metro districts because of the liability piece of us entering into keeping abreast of those situations. Metro districts change. They're fluid. So administrating that and managing that, I think at the front end from the education piece to be able to say, I don't want to say buyer beware, but buyer be knowledgeable of where you're moving and what the layering effect of the taxes are before you move in.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, Manager Hoffman. I have major issues with, here I am representing new people who are coming into my ward. And then later on, they find out, hey, we weren't notified that there was a position open, to be in this metro district. So I fully understand why we need metro districts. And I fully understand, the constraints behind it. I don't want to over control it, but I am responsible for those people who move into those homes, to understand their living situation. And if their metro district, costs go up, they need to make sure that they're being represented. So just like we would not have, taxes without representation just in our regular government, we need to make sure that we are overseeing that. Because we've been in major issues in Colorado when it comes to metro districts. So maybe this opens up a whole new can of worms. However, I just want to make sure that we're on the up and up when we talk about the metro districts in this particular area. And I would like to know more information as to what that looks like when you move in.
So metro districts are a legal entity, so they have to follow election calendars. And notify the residents within, they're required to notify those residents. So perhaps the question is, what is your notification process? Because clearly you have to follow the calendar of elections.
We send quite a few notices out to residents as well. And I should have noted at the very beginning, we actually do have a resident on the West Village board right now as it is. And we have a lot of participation from residents in our board meetings. So there's public posting of board meetings. There's also online postings of all the board actions that is accessible to residents and it's mailed out to them. So I know we're happy to have a resident on the board for West Village.
Okay, I will have some follow-up questions then as to what that looks like time-wise after the places are built. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Henkel. Are there any other first round questions? Okay, so we do have a couple follow-ups from a couple of my colleagues here. Brief follow-ups. We'll start with Councilmember Ward.
Brief being the key adjective.
Yes.
I get the only question that I really have as I sat here and pondered this and listened to the rest of my colleagues is, what does the timeline look like for this development? When are you looking to actually have groundbreaking? When are they supposed to be completed? When are we supposed to actually see the affordable units that you have proposed in here, et cetera?
So yeah, I just want to give credit to the planning staff. They got us through the process very quickly. We and our original date was closing with the builders on April 21st. And so that's the schedule we were trying to hit. I still think we could actually hit that schedule. the closing with the builders is kind of got pushed to the end of October. So that's when we close with the builders. We take all the infrastructure out to bid kind of late summer. There's like a 3-month public bidding process for all the infrastructure. And then once we close with the builders, that's when we start our construction. So phase 3, the intent is to start construction kind of late fall this year. And so that would go into next year, have kind of most of the infrastructure in, kind of landscaping in at the end of the year. And then houses kind of going vertical kind of next fall, basically. And then phase 4 is kind of a phase takedown that's a year later. So that would be of October of 2024 to kind of start the infrastructure on that one. Again, the same timeline, kind of working through the winter, through the summer, and then houses going up the kind of the next year. So phase 3 is October 2023.
Okay, and what about that affordable housing segment you have outlined there, since it does require a whole separate SDP? And
so it will have it go through a separate SDP kind of led by that affordable developer. But you know, I put 2025 on the slide. That's kind of still what we still believe on is the timing for that project.
is that for when it breaks ground or when it's move-in ready?
That would probably break ground because we got to get the infrastructure in. So we got to build Peak Street and 166th. And so, you know, we've got to kind of get all those streets in, get Purple Creek in, and then then they've got utilities and fire access for their project.
Yeah, okay, so realistically, that affordable complex probably wouldn't be moving ready till 2027.
So I would say, so October 2024 is when we start the infrastructure. 2025 is when we finish the infrastructure. They start late 2025. Yeah, break ground in 2025. That's what I would say. I think they could finish it in 9 to 12 months.
Okay, so 2027 is when they'd be moving ready. That's my only other questions that I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Holston.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I have one follow-up for staff and then follow-up for the developer. It's kind of going off of what Councilmember Hinkle asked. I understand that this is probably for discussion for a different day, but Attorney Rogers, do we have the authority to regulate and mandate greater disclosures, elections, that type of thing from metro districts?
It depends. We'd have to look at the service plans that we approved for the different metro districts and what authority is in the service plan. And then look at potential amendments to those service plans.
Okay. Thank you. And then follow up for developers. I was looking through our memo and it states several times 232 units that are proposed in these sections. What's the mix of those? How many are single family? How many are townhomes? How many are attached multifamily?
Well, now I got my mixed lady coming over here. Here we go. Okay, so we have 3 lot types. We got kind of a big single family detached, kind of small single family detached, and then all our single family attached, all our townhomes. And so we have 232 total units. We have 44 big single family detached, 81 middle size, and 107 attached. So 107 on 232, 45% is single family attached.
Okay. And how many single families are you building in the rest of the baseline development? That doesn't include this.
Single family detached?
Yes.
So in our Parkside East, we came and we had an amendment to our PUD. And we came and asked for an additional 195 single family detached units. And I'm trying to think what that total was. I don't have it top of my head, but
that's fine. I guess my question is, I am not a developer. I don't pretend to understand the financing mechanisms of this, but my question is, what is the impact on your development plans if you take away all of the detached homes and make them just townhomes? It seems to me like you'd have smaller units, but you'd be selling more of them. So I guess that's the question. Why not do, I know you talked about having a different mix of, spaces, but why not just put the density and have more attached units?
I think part of it's kind of variety, kind of giving buyers a choice of kind of what they, what kind of housing type they want. If you have all attached units, kind of the absorption is slower. It takes longer to find buyers for all those houses that just want that one product type. So having kind of multiple product types gives us kind of a broader swath of buyers to appeal to for these neighborhoods.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
Are there any additional follow-up questions? Well, I don't have any questions myself. I do appreciate the presentation, Mr. McBride, and other staff. Listening to your presentation, I know you're going to have some questions on the affordable housing and the density. I do appreciate that you have a stated intention to integrate that affordable housing into the rest of the community. And I understand also that there's a need for variety of in housing. One of our goals is to make sure that we're addressing the missing middle. I think this project probably does do that. And as you've heard, Center Street's a huge issue for everyone on council. So the quicker that gets going, the better, because I suspect it's going to be harder and harder to get these things through until that gets started.
I'll relay the message.
Okay. Well, having no more questions, the public hearing is now closed. Next is council's consideration of proposed resolution number 2023-18. Will the clerk please read proposed resolution 2023-18 by title?
Resolution number 2023-18, authorizing and approving the North Park Filing 2 replat H, East Village, Parkside West, phases 3 and 4, final plat and site development plan.
Thank you. Is there a motion? Councilmember Chef.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I move that resolution number 2021-183 be adopted.
Thank you. Is there a second? Councilmember Henkel.
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on the motion? Councilmember Ward.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. So I'm going to have to vote no on this. There's not enough density for me to really, honestly, we need that density for Highway 7 in particular, but also it's just more environmentally conscious. Broomfield has a lot of single family homes. And quite frankly, with all due respect, Mayor Pro Tem, the missing middle is in regards to cost, not the variety of homes, particularly. So I'm just I can't support this. You need the density. It's not there. Sorry. And I urge the rest of my colleagues to vote no on this. We need to do better. We can do better. And honestly, the income aligned housing does need to be incorporated entirely into the community and not just plopped on the side in an entirely separate STV.
Thank you for those comments, Councilmember Ward. Councilmember Holstein.
Mayor Pro Tem, yeah, I've been going back and forth this. I'm actually going to vote no also, and for largely the same reasons. I think that I understand the financial implications for you guys, and I do understand the challenges, and I do want to see this go forward, especially the center district. But we have too many single family homes in Broomfield already. I don't believe we need any more. We need more density, especially in this area. And we've already approved single family homes in this development, in the broader development. I just don't believe we should be approving any more at this point. And then also the affordable housing. I understand the limitations, but I do feel like it should be done in the project and not off the side. I feel that the stigma that puts on those people potentially is just too much in my opinion. So thanks. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. Any other comments? Member Chef.
Thanks, Mayor Pro Tem. So first of all, I just wanted to check. I read that it was what was in the council memo, that resolution number 2021-183 be adopted. Is that the correct motion number, or is this a different number for that resolution? It doesn't align with what
It's 2023-18.
that is. Yeah, that is not what I read. So do I need to restate that motion?
I would just suggest you revise the motion and who made the second, just confirm.
Okay, great. So I move that resolution number 2023-18 be adopted.
Thank you. And then there's Councilmember Henkel.
Yes, I second.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks, Mayor Pro Tem. I just wanted to clarify that. I think that, as was mentioned by our public tonight, as well as in previous public hearings, the community at large is definitely anxious about the commercial and retail development coming forward. So definitely do look forward to that happening. I think that, that's a big driver of this project actually working in terms of financial sense for the community, as well as those services up in that area. That's what really starts to pull this entire neighborhood together. So I do look forward to seeing that. With that said, the council in 2020 did approve additional single family housing in this development. I was a part of that council. I do think that that was a good decision to make. This is a good neighborhood design. It incorporates mixed housing throughout the neighborhood, as opposed to separating that in different blocks. I appreciate the trail connections and access to open space in the large park areas. I do look forward to seeing the melding of that Medici project for the affordable housing and that coming online to see how that is integrated with the rest of the development. But I do support this development tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Chef. Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you. And since others making comments, I will make mine as well, just kind of reiterating some of the points before, but also adding that this has been in the works for a long time. The plan has always been to continue to increase height as we go eastward, as we move away from the Anthem communities. And this is consistent with that plan that we've had in place for as we work to this moment. And I know we're ready for the Century District. I am ready to approve this plan tonight to get this last round of houses done. It's consistent with their long range financial plan. Anticipating Central Street District coming forward with that grocery store. We will be watching for it. And that is really what this is all hinging on, is to start to see that development in the Butterfly Pavilion, the STEM school, and we're moving in that direction. As long as we stay on pace with all these good things to come, this was the plan. So I will be voting yes. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we have Councilmember Leslie online. Has some comments?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I apologize earlier. My whole system froze when you called on me to vote, but I would have voted aye for that. Not that it matters anymore. I'm very pleased with this project and I'm going to support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional comments from my colleagues? Seeing no further discussion, we will move forward to the vote on resolution number 2023-18. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Cohen,
Yes.
Delgadillo,
No.
Hinkle,
Yes.
Jazersky,
Yes.
Leslie,
Yes.
Lim,
Yes.
Marsh Holshan,
No.
Schaff,
Yes.
Ward,
No.
Anderson.
Yes.
Thank you. I believe that motion passes 7-3. So thank you tonight again. And I think you've heard some of the concerns from our colleagues here on the dais. So certainly hope that you try to address those as much as possible.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think it's time for our break. So we will, looks like it's about 8:30 now. We will reconvene at 8:40. Back on the record. Our next item under council business this evening is the public hearing and council's consideration on second and final reading of proposed ordinance number 2207 relating to sales tax for remote sales. I will now declare the public hearing open. Council has a copy of the agenda memorandum, which I'll ask our staff to summarize.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. And round two, Brenda Ritchie, our Chief Financial Officer, is going to walk us through this briefly as it is second reading. Ms. Ritchie.
Thank you, Manager Hoffman. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council, Brenda Ritchie, Chief Financial Officer, here to discuss the proposed ordinance before you this evening. It is the second reading, amending certain sections of our Broomfield Municipal Code related to sales, use, and lodging tax. As you recall, the first reading was passed on February 7th, and this is just to assist in the successful implementation of the sales and use tax system that was identified by the state of Colorado. And so staff is seeking council's approval this evening for ordinance 2207 to be adopted of this reading and published in title. So next slide, Kyle, please. Thank you. Just to give some historical context and background, in 2017, state of Colorado established a task force under Senate Bill 17-1216, and that was in hopes of really simplifying the sales and use tax process. And which was timely given that the following year, the U.S. Supreme Court had upheld the Wayfair South Dakota decision. And what that really did was allow for the collection and enforcement related to remote and online retailers. Prior to that, the physical presence was really what we had here. So if there was a brick and mortar store, you were able to collect, but this ruling was enabled the state of Colorado to collect those sales taxes for online and remote locations. That foundational approach led to the creation of a single web portal by the Colorado Department of Revenue, leading into what's now the state sales and use tax, system that was launched in 2020. And what Colorado did was establish what's called an economic nexus in order to establish retail that's over $100,000. We have the ability to collect if that vendors or company is located outside of Broomfield. So it was that sales system was enacted in order to manage and track what was anticipated to be an influx of that sales and use tax coming in. Next slide, please. And so just to give some additional behind the Colorado sales and use tax system, and it's really just an online portal to allow businesses and any other retail component to remit their sales tax. So you might have a vendor that's located outside of Colorado, but they want to be able to ship and do business within Colorado. Rather than having them set up a sales tax system or establish with a local municipality, what the state has done is streamline that, created an online portal for vendors, businesses to actually come forward and use that system. So on February 7th, council did pass by resolution an intergovernmental agreement with Broomfield and the Colorado Department of Revenue in order for us to also participate in that program. To date, I believe there's 68 home rule municipalities that are participating in that. Next slide, Kyle. And so in terms of, we skipped one. Can we go back one? Sorry. Oh, maybe it's, I apologize if it's out of order. So we'll go forward one slide. Thanks. Sorry. I have my slides out of order. So why are we amending the municipal code? So it's really to help enhance what we've already done by participating in the system with the state of Colorado. What this does is allows for the reason why we want to align in implementing the system. It helps support by creating those definitions so that we can create that additional revenue potential. So as you can imagine, over 20 years ago, when the Broomfield Municipal Code was developed, the thought or even the reliance of commerce related to online sales or even interstate sales was not really something that was to this level of degree that nobody could have predicted. So in order to have that aligned, so we're asking to change and clarify definitions to allow for that additional revenue collection. And so it's not strictly just to online sales. I do want to point out that we are making revisions related to lodging as well, the lodging tax. For example, your Airbnb, your VRBOs, the ability for us to collect and remit taxes related to that. Next slide, please. And so wanted just to kind of quickly highlight the impact on businesses, and that we anticipate that the business community is also expected to benefit from us, one, going to an online centralized portal with the state, as well as they have the ease of trying to report. So again, using that example of you have a resident that would like to buy a specific item that is located out of state. Unfortunately, they don't ship to Broomfield because currently we're not participating. So by allowing that change in the code, as well as what we just recently did in February, will allow that retailer to actually register with the state. They might have previously only shipped to Lakewood, for example, but now have the ability to also easily sign up to have that remit their taxes to Broomfield rather than submitting a separate form to Broomfield. But we do provide the option for businesses to be able to do that as their choice. And the next slide, please. And so this last slide is really just to highlight the outcome of the proposed ordinance changes. And one of the biggest aspects of that is one, we're redefining what and expanding how we're calling our retailer and including that economic nexus that was mentioned. That includes that marketplace facilitator. So you think of your folks like Amazon, Walmart, Target, where they also have an online presence, versus your marketplace seller is that any type of retailer that provides goods for sale. So your Home Depots, your Zappos, as well as your multi-channel sellers. So those are those larger retailers that engage in different types of mechanisms for sale. So all of that, we anticipate that this will potentially increase our tax base to some degree for sales, use, and lodging, and is a benefit. So with that, I'll conclude and ask that council consider the proposed ordinance before you in publishing in full. And that concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you for that presentation. So next is public comment. Does anyone who would like to be heard, please come to the podium and state your name and neighborhood for the record. We'd ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes. Looks like there is no one tonight. Do we have anyone online? And there is no one online as well, so we will proceed with council comments. Questions from city council are next. And again, I'm advising my members to limit themselves to questions during this portion, and the time to introduce amendments or state positions for or against this item is later. Are there any questions? Councilmember Chef.
Just one quick question that I caught during your presentation. I just wanted to clarify. So you had said that this will increase our tax revenue base. And when you said that, it made me think that we aren't increasing taxes and we aren't, coming up with some way in which to create more taxes, but it's similar to what we're doing with our water, right? That we have water that's continuing down the river as opposed to collecting that. And so would this be in the same way that we have taxes that just aren't being paid? And so this will create the mechanism to actually collect those taxes.
Thanks for the opportunity to clarify, Councilmember Schaaf. So what it's doing is allowing for, we were not previously able to collect taxes from some of those retailers. And so this will allow us, so it could potentially increase those revenues associated with the taxes. So this is not adjusting any tax rate or you are correct that we are increasing the opportunity for to collect from vendors, businesses that we wouldn't have previously collected from. So it has the potential to increase some sales and use taxes that we receive in revenue.
Great. Thank you for that clarification. That's all I have, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. Any other questions from council? Okay, there being no questions, the public hearing is closed. Next is council's consideration of proposed ordinance number 2207 on second and final reading. Will the clerk please read proposed ordinance number 2207 by title?
Ordinance number 2207, amending certain sections of chapter 3-04 of the Broomfield Municipal Code relating to sales tax for remote sales, second and final reading.
Thank you. Is there a motion? Councilmember Ward.
Thank you. I move that ordinance number 2207 be adopted on second and final reading and published by title.
Thank you. Is there a second? Councilmember Henkel?
Second.
And is there any discussion? Okay, seeing no discussion, will the clerk please call the roll?
Delgadillo,
Yes.
Hinkle,
Yes.
Jazerski,
Yes.
Leslie,
Yes.
Lim,
Yes.
Marsh Holshan,
Yes.
Schaff,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Cohen.
Yes.
Thank you. That passed unanimously, 10-0. So we'll be moving on to our next item of business. This is a public hearing and council's consideration on second and final reading of proposed ordinance number 2199 relating to residential growth management. I will now declare the public hearing on this item open. Council has a copy of the agenda memorandum, which I will ask our staff to summarize.
Stella Anna Burton-Zetti is back up again. Ms. Burton-Zetti.
Thank you and good evening again, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council. If I could have the next slide, please. Staff provided a pretty detailed memorandum and a detailed presentation with the first reading of this ordinance. It covered an overview of the study sessions from 2022 that led to the drafting of this ordinance that is under consideration for this evening. As a very quick summary, these regulations have been in place since about 1998. And while initially they may have been very effective over time, and with the changes in development patterns and the numerous large-scale developments that necessitated development agreements, the regulations have become an ineffective tool in managing growth. Next slide, please. The reasons for the lack of effectiveness of this ordinance were detailed in the staff memorandum on the first reading. And in brief, many projects are currently exempted from these requirements. This includes Anthem, Arista, Baseline, and many individual projects were granted exemptions either through their zoning, through the planned unit development district, or in their individual site development plans. Next slide, please. The first reading of this ordinance took place on January 24th, 2023, and if approved, would remove the growth ordinance requirements that are currently within the municipal code. Staff is also working on other updates to development regulations that will be updating long-range plans to provide specific direction to future development to ensure that it occurs in ways that are consistent with Broomfield's goals and priorities while ensuring our economic sustainability. These will include considerations of water-wise landscaping requirements, reviewing density requirements and development standards for new development, establishing ways to encourage mixed use and redevelopment in key areas, and ensuring development standards around parking and energy efficiency are working towards our community goals. Broomfield's development review process will continue to provide opportunities for shaping future growth. And it's intended that these efforts previously outlined on January 17th in regards to the future Broomfield efforts will only serve to strengthen and clarify the direction of future development as we move forward with Broomfield. And that concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you for that presentation. And we will now proceed with public comments, again, starting in person. Is there anyone who'd like to be heard? Please come to the podium, state your name and neighborhood for the record. Looks like we have no one willing to comment on this item. Anyone online? And no one online as well, so we will proceed with council questions. Again, members should limit themselves to questions during this time period, and time to introduce amendments or state positions for or against will be later. So any questions? We have no questions. So if there being no further questions, the public hearing is closed. Next is council's consideration of proposed ordinance number 2199 on second and final reading. Will the clerk please read the ordinance by title?
Ordinance number 2199, repealing chapter 17-62 residential growth management from the Broomfield Municipal Code, second and final reading.
Is there a motion? Councilmember Henkel?
I move that ordinance number 2198 be adopted on second reading as directed by the city council and be published.
Thank you. And is there a second? Councilmember Ward?
Can I just clarify with staff first, whether it's ordinance 2198 or 2199, because there's a discrepancy in the packet.
My packet says 2199.
Yeah, and then the proposed actions recommendations, this is 2198. I could reread it saying 2199. I move that ordinance number 2199 be adopted on second reading as directed by city council and be published.
Thank you. And we've confirmed that's accurate, 2199? Hey, I just want to make sure. Yes, it is. Okay.
And I will second that motion.
Thank you, Councilmember Ward. Questions from, as we did the questions, any comments from any council members? Seeing no comments. Oh, we do have one. I'm sorry. Looked right over you, Councilmember Chef. Go ahead.
I feel like that was intentional.
Seeing no comments, time to move on.
No, so I encourage my council colleagues to vote in favor of repealing the residential growth management. I think that, you know, as we've done, we managed growth through intentional and thoughtful development. You know, I think that it's important as we move forward that we ensure that we have the mechanisms to make the decisions on future growth, such as water status, infrastructure needs, open lands goals, and ensuring that we have the operations and services to take care of our future residents as we continue to grow. So making sure that we have those mechanisms to make those decisions in the future. Thank you.
Thank you for those brief and concise comments. Is there anyone else that would like to address this issue as well? No one further. We will now proceed with the roll call.
Hinkle,
Yes.
Jezerski,
Yes.
Leslie,
Yes.
Lim,
Yes.
Marshall,
Yes.
Schaff,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Cohen,
Yes.
Delgadillo.
Yes.
Thank you. Ordinance number 2199 passes unanimously, 10-0. So we will now move forward with item 11D. Our final item today for council business is a public hearing and council's been consideration on second and final reading of proposed ordinance number 2206 relating to health insurance benefits for elected officials for future terms. I'll now declare the public hearing open on this item. Again, council has a copy of the agenda memorandum, which we will ask staff to summarize.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Nikki Macklin, our Director of HR, will briefly introduce this item. Ms. Macklin.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. On January 24th, Council approved the first reading of Ordinance 2206 to amend Chapter 2-02 of the Broomfield Municipal Code to provide medical, dental, and vision insurance benefits for mayors and council members for future terms based on the same premium contribution model as benefited employees. It's important to note that if approved, this ordinance would not apply to any member of the current council. It would only apply to elected officials that are elected or re-elected to a new term in future elections. I won't go into detail what we've already covered in January, but if council wishes to approve the ordinance, it's recommended that ordinance number 2206 be adopted on second and final reading, ordered and published. That commences my brief presentation. So with that, I will turn it over to council for questions and public comment.
Thank you, Ms. Macklin. We'll first proceed with public comments. Again, starting with in person. If there's anyone who would like to be heard, please come to the podium and state your name and neighborhood for the record. Seeing no one, do we have anyone online? And there is no one online, so we will proceed once again with questions from City Council. Again, members, limit yourselves to questions during this portion. Do we have any questions? Okay, looks like we are moving right along. There are no questions. So the public hearing on this item is also closed. Next is council's consideration of proposed ordinance number, I'll make sure we get this right, 2206 on second and final reading. Will the clerk please read the ordinance by title?
Ordinance number 2206, amending chapter 2-02 of the Broomfield Municipal Code to provide for health insurance benefits, medical, dental, and vision for elected officials for future terms, second and final reading.
Thank you. Is there a motion? Councilmember Hulshin.
I move that ordinance number 2206 be adopted on second and final reading and ordered published.
Thank you. Is there a second? Councilmember Ward.
And I'll second the motion.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Delgadillo. I don't know if
Thank
I got
you.
that right that time.
You did.
Oh,
Thank you,
cheek
Mayor
too.
Pro Tem. Yeah, you're just crushing it today. I wanted to share that I am strongly in favor of this and not personally for myself. I am a manager of data analytics at a tech company. So and my spouse works for CU Boulder. We both have really good benefits. If I were to lose my job, he would have benefits. But I really do want to think about the folks who are discouraged from running for office and seeking office because it is not economically viable. I wonder if we would have more folks who are lower income, more folks who are early in their careers, more folks who cannot right now make the financial choice to do this because it doesn't come with benefits. So that is something that I think is really important to consider. And that's why I'm in favor of this, even though I would probably, I would not personally partake. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional comments? Councilmember Anderson.
And I will just quickly reiterate, like I said last time, I will be voting no on this one again, probably the only lone no vote, but I'm not convinced that this acts as a health insurance for council members is going to lead to the ability for, anyone to run for office. There's many barriers. It can be access to childcare, time commitment, cost of raising a family, and so much more. And although this, I think one of the parts that really gets me is that this looks very expensive, and yet we're all sitting up here saying that the majority of us are not going to be using this. And so we're hoping that maybe sometime in the future, somebody would use this method, but I would prefer to look at that continuously just increasing the compensation to the council members, which then gives that flexibility for each person to determine, how to get past those barriers to access. So I will be voting no. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Anderson. Councilmember Ward.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I will be voting in favor of this. Honestly, I'd probably be the only one up on this dais that would actually, if reelected in 2025, supposing I run, that I would be the only one probably using this benefit. I currently pay $340 a month for health insurance. And when I originally ran, no, it did not factor into my plans as to whether this would become an issue, but honestly, it kind of has become an issue. $300 a month for health insurance for one person is quite a bit of money, especially when I'm already paying almost $2,000 a month for rent, plus whatever else I'm paying for gas and insurance and car payments, et cetera. Councilmember Anderson does make a great point that we pay wise, there is a discrepancy there that we may be addressing in the future, potentially, who knows? But that's a whole nother conversation that I think is separate from insurance. I don't think if we were privately employed, that would be a very good way to talk to your employees. Oh, we're just going to pay you more. Go buy your health insurance, $800 a month. That's not subsidized. That's all I really have to say.
Thank you, Councilmember Ward. Councilmember Hulshin.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I will be supporting this. As I said before, I would not be participating in it, assuming I got reelected in 2025, because I have good insurance through my employer and my wife also has insurance through her employer. But it is a small step, and I take Councilmember Anderson's point. I do understand that, and that's a larger discussion that we need to engage in. But this is just one step that needs to be addressed. And I think that anything we can do to make it easier, reduce the barrier to running, I think is something we should be doing. And just the equity of this measure is something that we should address. I don't think it's not something that's overly burdensome. especially since a lot of us wouldn't be using it, but I just believe that we should move forward with this first small step. So that's why I support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional comments? Well, I will be supporting this as well. This is something that's along with Mayor Castriata. We've been really pushing for this for over the past 4 years. So very excited to see that it's a possibility that it'll get passed tonight. And I will say that I did speak to a couple potential people that might run for council in the next year or so. And when we mentioned that we're thinking of addressing adding health benefits, that was something that was perked up their ears right away. So it was something that they did find interesting, and thinking at least in one case, it could be a deciding factor because they would have to leave their job if they were to pursue this. So able to find healthcare in another setting was actually an important point for that person. So saying that, there's no further discussion. We will then move forward with the vote on ordinance number 2206. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Jazerski,
Yes.
Leslie,
No.
Lim,
Yes.
Marshall,
Yes.
Schaff,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Anderson,
No.
Cohen,
Yes.
Delgadillo,
Yes.
Hinkle,
Yes.
Does that have, oh,
yes.
was it 8-2? Is that what
Yes.
Okay, so that passes 8-2. Thank you. So then we're going to move forward with the attorney's report. City and county attorney's report is next. Ms. Rogers, do you have a report?
No, Mayor Pro Tem, thank you.
Thank you. Then the city and county manager's report is next after that. Ms. Hoffman, do you have a report?
Brevity is key at this moment. No, I do not.
Okay. We're rocking and rolling. All right, there is no legislative update this evening and no business before the Broomfield Urban Renewal Authority or the Arista Local Improvement District Board of Directors. This evening, we do have one special report for council certifying the mill levies of tax authorities for the 2022 property tax. Council has a copy of the agenda memorandum, which I will ask staff to summarize.
I thought I'd wait so you didn't have to rush down.
Thank you.
Jay Amashita, our fearless assessor, who's going to have his hands full for the next 2 years. He's going to briefly walk us through this item. And Jay, if you would, I don't know if it's part of your presentation or not, but if at the end you'd be kind enough to let council and the community know some of the workshops that are coming up.
Sure.
Thank you.
Can do that. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, council members, Jay Yamashita, assessor. I want to apologize I have a cold, so I sound really horrible. I don't feel horrible. I sound horrible. Anyway, I am here this evening to certify the mill levies for tax authorities for tax year 2022. In accordance with state law, public entities levying property taxes within city and county of Broomfield are required to certify their levies for property taxes to the boards of county commissioners by December 15th of every year. Property taxing entities include school districts, fire districts, other special districts, and cities and counties. These mill levies are used to establish the property taxes levied on all properties located in the county for the following year. Certification authorizes the mill levies and resulting tax rates to be collected by the city and county of Broomfield. The authority to set the mill levies remains entirely with the respective tax authorities. All tax authorities met the mill levy certification deadline of December 15th. And in accordance with resolution number 2022-158, the assessor has delivered the mill levies to the city clerk, who certified the mill levies for all tax authorities by December 22nd of 2022, deadline required by the Colorado statute. Exhibit A is the 2022 mill levy change report. This report identifies the prior mill levy and each tax authority and the new mill levy and the total change and an explanation if there was a greater than 1 mill increase. You want me to go into that right now?
Yes, please.
Okay. So I would like to update council on some outreach made to our residents. In anticipation of the value increases, we are trying to educate and prepare our residents. As you've heard, Governor Post has announced the average increase to be 26%. This is a statewide average and increases will vary by location. So in February 2nd of 2023, Kim Pfeiffer, the treasurer, and myself did a presentation in council chambers, and it was titled Understanding Property Taxes and How to Read Your Tax Notice. We are now coming up on a new, I'm going to present on April 17th, 2023 from 6 to 7 p.m. at night, and I'm going to explain values and reading your notice of value. Notice of values will be mailed out in May. And we will also have resources available that evening for our residents, which are also going to be the senior homestead exemption, the veterans exemption, as well as the city and county of Broomfield property tax refund program. We plan on having somebody from the housing, our housing department here as well to answer any questions that may arise. So the May notice of value will reflect the tax notice for January of 2024. Our department, as well as Danae and her team, are monitoring all new legislation. As we know, that is to end in May. A lot of things can change as they did last year. Staff will be available to answer questions as our residents receive their NOVs, the notice of values. And in addition, all the presentations are recorded. As we know, our residents are busy and may need to watch this at a later date. So we are recording each of these. The February 2nd was recorded, and we will record the April 17th as well. And that is my presentation for this evening. If there are any questions.
Thank you. We will first proceed with any public comments, again, starting with in person. If there's anyone who'd like to be heard on this item, please come to the podium and state your name and neighborhood for the record. And limit your comments, please, to 3 minutes.
Roxy Julia Nakamura. Breaking my own eardrum, sorry. So your presentation is going to be in April, correct? But our statement comes out in May. So how are we going to be able to have questions to ask if we don't even know what the statement says?
So at this stage,
I'll let you.
At this stage, we're just going to kind of present in a way so that we can try and educate our residents with what the notice of value is going to look like and what is that information is going to pertain. As I stated earlier, once those notice of values hit the streets in May, my staff will be available to answer all questions as they arise, or if anybody has any questions. What we're trying to do is just trying to prepare our residents for what is coming and what that may look like.
That's great. It sounds like it's an education piece and, like you said, preparation for what they're going to be seeing in the mail.
Correct.
Makes sense. So any other comments from the public? Do we have anything online? And no one online, so we will proceed with questions from City Council. Again, members should limit themselves to especially 3 minutes. Yeah, Councilmember Lim.
Yes, do you have any update for us on the applications for the senior property rebate?
And
A property tax rebate?
yeah, sorry, I don't have any information that's handled by another department.
That was like a pilot program where we had a limited amount of funding. And I was just, and I know it's still, the application period is still extending, but I was a little apprehensive how that funding would run if, hopefully we haven't exceeded the funding at this early stage.
Councilmember Lim, we have not exceeded it. The application remains open, and just as a little bit of a background, pilot program, $500,000 this year, $500,000 next year. Income qualified for seniors in order to receive up to $1,000 for that rebate. The way we got to the $1,000 is we're anticipating that to be essentially the gap. Part of Jay's education piece is oftentimes when any one of our residents, and I'm going to look at Abby to be anticipating to, while I go through just a couple more minutes, we'll have the number of folks that have applied. It's confusing because now property sales have decreased, property values have decreased. Because everything's in arrears. So it's counterintuitive to think when they get these bills that will be for 2025, right? You're going to see, it's not going to be reflective of the downward trend, only the upward trend. So part of that means with everything else that is happening, what that gap looks like of upwards of 25%. And Jay, clarify for council and the community that's listening, it's not a 25% increase in your tax bill. It is a 25% increase on the assessed valuation.
That is correct.
So what does that mean?
So that means that it isn't directly correlate to taxes. So meaning that because you see a 25% increase in your actual value on your notice of value does not mean that you're going to see a 25% increase in your taxes. The difference is we take the value times the residential assessment rate, which I believe is going to be 6.06765, I believe is what it's going to for 2023. And that'll be taken to our assessed value. And then that times the mill levy will equate to the actual tax dollars that will be paid. And again, as we know, mill levies are always set in December, so we don't even know what that mill levy will look like until December.
At all?
So it's over 30 for the senior tax rebate. They are coming to council to provide an update and to further expand the outreach and engagement to capture more. So they've been at the senior lunches, Councilmember Lim, and that outreach and engagement from all of those various senior populations, especially the silver sneakers. But there's that existing population out there for seniors that don't come to the lunch, don't come to the senior, the silver sneakers or any type of recreation activities. So kind of penetrating that, and that really is where the income aligned, that's where that gap is. So more to come on that, which is why we wanted such a large window for those applications to capture just as many as we could.
Okay, good. Yeah, I had an email over the weekend from a Ward 3 resident who had said she was one of the first ones to apply.
Oh.
And so I was interested in knowing, if the educational piece was getting out, how we were doing with applications and then, funding. So thanks.
You bet.
Thank you. Councilmember Holstein.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. So my question is, does the assessment rate that you mentioned, does that take into consideration the legislation that the state passed last year? So that's why it's dropping from the 7.15 to.
Yes, correct.
Okay. So while the assessment, the value is going to go up 25% or whatever, as you mentioned, the actual tax isn't going to go up that as dramatically. Is that?
You're still, like I said, we're still going to see increases in value. So no matter what, as far as what you're going to see is you still are going to see somewhat of an increase in possibly the taxes. The difference being, again, it's not a relationship that's equal to.
Okay. And is the state backfilling us at all for that reduction?
Yeah, it is being backfilled by the state.
100% or just?
Everything is based on population, I believe. And I think we fall in the criteria where we will get at least 90%, I believe, back based on population.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Councilmember Anderson.
Okay, I appreciate that explanation of even since the increase is going up 23 to 25%, that then the mill levy isn't set till December, and that for the city and county of Broomfield. And so that could actually decrease, thereby not increasing your property value, about your tax rate as much. But then I have a question about the metro districts. Because the metro districts, those are consistent, right? So that would go up that entire?
It can depend. Again, they're looking at the numbers that we give them for what they need to budget for the following year as to what they want to put as far as their mill levies. And we don't govern any of that. That is all controlled by them. And they just directly report to our office to say, here's what we want for our mill levy for the following year.
So and the school districts, is that similar? Their mill levy can fluctuate as well? Okay, so it's kind of up to the metro districts themselves to determine if their mill levy is going to decrease at all because property values went up. Okay, so that's a good reason to pay really close attention to your metro district and to apply to be on those boards. So I do have a question here, and I think this goes to Councilmember Hinkle's earlier questions. We have the Palisade Metro District #1 went up from 61 to 70. These are high mills, and increased 9.391, and that was something that the board decided to. That's dependent totally on that board, and they can do that because that kind of shocks me. And that is a decision. That's a huge increase.
I think it decreased. Let us check on that.
Which Palisade is that?
Palisade Metro District #1 went from 61. Oh, is that the previous year? Wait, there's previous in the first column. 21 to 22. So that's actually it.
Right. So as it states, it goes from 61.023 to 70.414, which is a 9.391 mil increase. And as it states, they told us the reason why the values decreased, but their budget has increased. So that's just the information that is conveyed to our office by the Metro District to say, here's the reason why. And we just convey that information on to you so that you know why it increased or decreased.
Okay, no, that's helpful to know. And yeah, definitely that transparency in those metro districts and staying involved is important. So thank you for that information in that upcoming session.
Sure.
Thank you.
Councilmember Anderson, in response to Councilmember Hinkle's questions, we're preparing a comprehensive email with kind of the ins and outs of special districts, when the elections are, who oversees it, and to what extent we can influence, can't control, but to what extent can we influence? And one of the questions, Nancy, that if we could include it, I just sent a bunch of links. They come to us to, we have one metro district right now that we've talked about that wanted to increase a pretty significant amount, and we have to approve it. So that will be included in the write-up with the special districts. Under what circumstances does it come to us? Being the council, and because we don't do it administratively, under what circumstances does it come, and under what circumstances are they able to have the freedom to do it and then just report? So there's a difference between transparency on here's what we're doing, and a difference when it's here's what we want to do, here's why we want to do it, can we do it? So really clearly delineating those two categories. Absolutely. Yes, wow, yes. I know I'm feeling like a council person saying, well, so staff capacity. Yes, but that's what we're going to work on.
Mr. Rogers was like, it's going to take a while.
You know, and the districts are so different, right? So we've got to be really careful about saying something broadly that might not apply depending on service plans, but we can focus specifically on the ones that were mentioned tonight, and the one that was mentioned earlier with the comment. So
I think that'd be just helpful. Maybe even just some general outlines would be helpful, because I think there's some confusion, amongst my colleagues. So it'd be helpful just to have some general information as to the, what, where, and when of metro districts and special districts.
Agreed. And we have a very good relationship with the executive director of special districts. It would be great to have her come and kind of field these questions. And there's also a great FAQ on their website that I was just looking at. So we'll include that from a resource perspective. And timing wise, we have another special district that is coming in late April. They don't want to increase, but they want to extend. And this is from one of the developers that is building roads that the IKEA property was supposed to build. But of course, we've been waiting on IKEA for 12 years now. So that developer took it upon themselves to put that infrastructure in. And that took away from the amphitheater and the park that's up in Palisade. So that developer has contacted us to be able to say, because those funds went in a different direction, we now need to extend rather, that the mill levies for a certain period of time in order to construct or finish constructing what would have otherwise been constructed had they not put in the infrastructure. So again, kind of to Nancy's point, they are across the board and they are complex creatures. And the fact that we have so many, there's no hard and fast rules. So much of it is about that service plan.
Great. Councilmember Anderson, did you have anything further?
Only one last comment question is that as these, that presentation, if there's some kind of a brief information that can go out to the community to show that to take away that initial shock that the mill levy does go down would be super helpful, because I can see that concern growing and that appearance of this excessive amount of money is coming in that's not. So yeah, some kind of if we can get a communication out, that'd be in the loop or something, that'd be super helpful.
Thank you. Any additional comments?
Mayor Pro Tem,
Questions?
could we get clarification on what Councilmember Anderson just said? Say that one more time.
Can we?
Please.
Oh, what I was, if I look at this high level and I see my property tax bill go up 25%, that's going to scare people. They're thinking, oh my gosh, that's like another $1,000 in taxes. Not thinking that the average person isn't going to say, oh, but the mill levy's going down. That's going to even out because I'm not going to be paying that much more money. I think just some kind of whatever's being said in that presentation and that calculation of that mill levy, that just because you're seeing this increase coming in, that's gonna be released in May, the mill levy is gonna come till December, that to somehow help to reduce that concern that the property tax bills are going up 25%. Just whatever you can say in that regards would be helpful.
So I just want to clarify, because we know residents watch, right? Not property tax bills going up 25%. It's valuations which inform that property tax, just so we're all clear, right? It's going to vary and it's going to be different. But so I think our first step, and Councilmember Anderson, obviously at the direction of council, but I think our first step truly is that April 17th community forum, because I think it will, like we did in February, walk people through that, what a valuation statement is, what it looks like, how it informs your property tax that will come in January of 2024 or each year. But in this case, May valuations inform January 2024. And then it also, I believe, and I'm going to look at Jay to keep me honest here, it estimates what your taxes will be in 2024 in January. So I think that's helpful too, to residents as they plan. So for me, I'm thinking of, I live close to you. I'm going to look at that valuation and go, oh, okay, so here's what happened to my valuation. Here's what now my taxes are estimated at in January. I have 7 or 8 months to plan for that increase, right? Or to use some of the resources. I wouldn't qualify for those, but others would. So I think we start there. And then I know Jay's working with our communications team about what other communication needs to go out after that. We just want to be really mindful that Jay's team is finishing those numbers now. So we can't answer the question of a resident. Like if we went to Jay and said, hey, what is the increase on my valuation for my home? They haven't finished those numbers yet. That will come into March, Jay, I believe.
And we have to have it to the printer, I think, by the end of March.
Into March. So we want to make sure we've got a cadence for this so we can answer those questions more specifically to the homeowners. But I want to make sure I was understanding your question as well. Hopefully that's a little helpful.
Well, no, say I need to go to that presentation in April, because I'm just like that. I mean, obviously, I was just trying to think of and we can do that, talk about the communication after that, but that number that's estimated, that would be based on the current mill levy or the estimated upcoming mill levy, because that could be, I just think there could be some sticker shock. That's all. But we can wait till after April and then figure out how to make sure we're communicating the information correctly to the community. I just don't want anything misinterpreted by our constituents, like it to be, if it's gonna look scary, I think. So yeah, I'll wait till April, go to the presentation, and then we can see from there. So, thank you.
Thank you. We're all clear on this one? Yep, okay. Any additional questions? Seeing, Councilmember Schaaf.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. So I do have two questions. And I think I know the answer to these, but I want to make sure they're on the record and ask. Do we have any ability to adjust or decline the mill levy increase for any of the taxing districts other than the city and county of Broomfield?
Do not.
We do not. Thank you. And the other one is, can we decline to certify the mill levies that are listed in this sheet, or is this something that we have to do automatically?
It's a statutory requirement.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate the answers.
Thank you for your quick and brief comments, questions. Is there anyone else that has a comment, question? Nothing. Okay. Well, there's no action items on this, so we do appreciate your time, Mr. Yamashita, coming down here tonight. And I know you're gonna be busy over the next year or so.
Sure. Thank you. I
Thank you.
appreciate it. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. So there are no requests for future action this evening. Including the items on the agenda. Is there any other business to come before council tonight? Going once, going twice. Okay, we're going to adjourn for 15 minutes and then Ms. Henkel is going to go into the chambers with staff and have a meeting on metro districts.